Chair Gull, you may begin.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. Welcome to the Monday, January 9th, 2023 City of Burlingame Planning Commission meeting. For all in attendance today, please note that this Planning Commission meeting is being held using the Zoom webinar format. So you will see the planning commissioners and staff or panelists. Please note that there are several ways to submit comments during this meeting. You may raise your hand in Zoom by clicking on the raise hand button located at the bottom of your screen. Members of the public who are participating in the Zoom webinar by phone can dial *9 to raise a hand. You may also send your comments by email to publiccomment@burlingame.org. Staff will be monitoring emails submitted during the meeting, which will be read at the appropriate time. The length of the emailed comment should be commensurate with the 3 minutes customarily allowed for verbal comments. If you are an applicant or an applicant's representative, I will ask you to raise your hand when your agenda item is up for discussion so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. We ask that you also turn on your video at that time so that we can have more clear communication, simulating the experience we would have if we were meeting in person. This meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will be uploaded to the city's website after the meeting. Agenda item number 2 is roll call. The record should note that we have 6 commissioners present tonight with Commissioner Lowenthal absent, and it appears that we may not have a video for Commissioner Schmid tonight, but he does have audio, if I'm not mistaken. And we'll update that as we go along. So that will bring us to agenda item number 3, which is the approval of the minutes. We have meeting minutes to approve for the Monday, December 12th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Are there any comments, changes, discussion on the minutes?
Yes.
Sorry. I just had to get the screen up. Vice Chair Paul.
Yeah, it's just their cleanup items, just a few little ones. So,
Right.
On page 10, towards the bottom, there's reference to Harry Desson, which that's a historical figure in Burlingame, and it would be it's DESSIN. There are 2 misspellings in that bottom paragraph under, I guess that's 8D, but it's the bottom page of 10. Then on page 11, under, I guess that's the same house, under commission discussion, it talks about the windows. The windows look very flat, not detailed. They look different. It says they look different than the original windows, but it should say they look different than the originally proposed windows. Then further down the page, it talks about the design consultants, their job. And we don't necessarily have to agree with the design consultant. They sometimes, and it should say, get pushback by the applicant, and the applicants ultimately are the ones that submit singular the plan.
Mhm.
Then I've got on page 12, Carlene Harvey under public comment is with a K, not a C, Karlene. And then finally on page 13, it's 3/4 of the way down. I really appreciate the flipping of the house in order to significantly reduce the trimming on the tree crown, not the trim on the crown, because it makes it sound like molding. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any other corrections? Don't see any hands. So I would make a motion to approve the minutes for this meeting.
Second.
So we have a motion by Chair Gall, second by Commissioner Haran. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Pfaff,
Aye.
and Chair Gull.
Aye. So the motion passes 6-0-1 and this is not appealable. That brings us on to agenda item 4, approval of the agenda. Okay, member of the, oh, I'm sorry. The public is permitted to speak on items that are listed on under the consent calendar. I'm sorry, commissioners' reports, directors' reports, requests for future agenda items, new items, or items not on the agenda. Public comments or scheduled agenda items should wait until that item is heard by the planning commissions. Persons are required to limit their remarks to 3 minutes unless extension of time is granted by the chair. Please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom during this item to speak under the public comments. Speakers desiring answers to questions should direct them to the planning commission, and if relevant, the commission may direct them to the appropriate staff member. The Ralph M. Brown Act, the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits the planning commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Do we have, oops, I'm sorry. I skipped one. Well, I'm going to do this and then, does anyone from the public wish to speak on any item that is not on the agenda?
Chair Gull, I don't see any hands raised, and we did not receive any public comment.
Okay, then we will move on from the public comment section and go back to agenda item number 4, the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda on, and do we have any recusals?
There are no changes from staff.
And
I will be recusing from item 7A
7A, okay,
as we are the project architect.
all right, thank you. Any other recusals?
I'll be recusing from item 7B and 8A and that's it.
Okay. Thank you. And is that all of the recusals that we have at the moment? Yeah. Okay. And there are no changes to the agenda, correct, Ruben?
That's correct.
All right. Then we will skip back to agenda item number 6 and study items. So study items, we have the 2023 to 2031 housing element update, and I'm going to hand this over to Planning Director Gardner.
Thank you, Chair Gull, members of the Planning Commission. And this first item is a review and opportunity for public comment on the housing element update. I've got a series of slides that are meant to provide an overview and perhaps answer some of the most common questions we get. In terms of introductions on who has been producing the housing element, it's been myself, Planning Manager Ruben Hurin, and then I don't believe you've met previously, but our Economic Development and Housing Specialist, Joseph Sanfilippo, has also been working on this and is here on the panel should there be questions for the housing element itself. So what is a housing element? It is a plan for housing that's needed in the community. It talks about what types of housing do we need, where should it go, the policies and programs to go with that housing. It is something that's required by state law and is guided by target numbers, and is something that's updated every 8 years. So some of you may have been around in 2014, 2015 when the last one was adopted. Believe it or not, it's been 8 years already. It starts with the general plan. So in terms of the hierarchy, the housing element is an element of the general plan. The general plan guides cities and towns and counties in ways that they should be planning for changes, growth, what have you. The housing element is part of every general plan, and it is also a requirement for every city to prepare one. It plans for the homes that are needed in the community. You'll hear this term RHNA, and we will try to use the least amount of technical jargon as possible, but this is one that is just out in the world. It stands for the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, RHNA, and it's customarily just called RHNA. This is a target for homes that are given to every municipality. It's one way of looking at it is it's a fair share of the total housing burden for the region. The numbers start on the state level. They get divided down into regions. Our region is the Association of Bay Area Governments, which is the Bay Area. And then ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments, divides out the numbers of units based on, a lot of it's based on employment. There's a lot of metrics that go into that. Availability of land, employment, schools, it's a big balancing act just to figure out what the allocations will be. Burlingame's allocation for the next 8 years is 3,257 units. And then of those, they're divided into different income category goals. So everything from very low income, which is 50% of AMI, all the way up to above moderate income. What is AMI? That is another jargon term that is area median income. In San Mateo County in 2022, the area median income for an individual or one-person household was $116,200. For a couple, $123,800. For a household of 4, $166,000. There are numbers for larger households as well. We just haven't included them here. So, for example, a very low income household, if it's a couple, it would be half of the $123,800. So that's going to be about a little more than $60,000 in their combined housing income. How does the 3,257 stack up with everything else that we've been working on? We know you've all been working on looking at and approving housing projects, and then the general plan also had plans for housing. So our allocation for this next 8 years is 3,257 units, very close to what the general plan had already chosen to do. So I think this is important in absence of any numbers coming from the state. When we updated the general plan in 2019, the decision was made to allow the city to grow by about 20%, and that would be just shy of 3,000 units. So we kind of lucked out that we're very close to what the state ultimately decided would be appropriate for the city. So there's 306 units to make up. Now, the good part is we get credit for what are called pipeline projects. And these are projects that have been approved, but have not yet been, they may be either under construction, they may be in building permit review. They are entitled, so somebody could go forward and construct them. The main rule was they could not have had their certificate of occupancy prior to last summer. So, for example, the 920 Bayswater project, which is now completed and is open for lease. We are allowed to count that one because it did not open for lease until this fall, and that was after the state deadline. So there's 2,412 units already in the pipeline. Should all of those get built, we get credit for all of them. One question that comes up, and this is just sort of a tangent, but how many of those pipeline projects are rental versus for sale? Certainly the vast majority are for rent. 84% have been approved as rental apartments, and those tend to be in larger projects. However, 16% are for sale. This may be something you want to look at as we go into looking at policies and such. The for sale projects tend to be smaller. They're either smaller condominium developments or townhouse developments. So that would give us, just in terms of the total numbers, 845 units to make up for in the next 8 years. It's about 100 units a year, and at the pace we've been going, that seems pretty doable. However, that's the total numbers. We still have these different income categories that we want to reach. So I think we feel pretty confident with the 3,257 units, including our pipeline and anything else. But it's still going to be a bit of a challenge to reach these different income thresholds. So in terms of the pipeline projects, it's not bad. It could certainly be worse, but we have a pretty good chunk in the very low income category from the Village of Burlingame, and then there's also a new proposal that we are allowed to count as a pipeline project at 1875 California Drive, which would be also a 100% affordable project. On the low income category, most of those are units that are included in previously approved developments, and a lot of those have come forward as part of the state density bonus law that projects can get additional units if they provide lower income units, and the lower the income, the higher the bonus. So we've had a lot of those in that 80 and 60% category. Moderate, we're a little behind on that. However, one thing that it's kind of a nuance in the housing element. A number of the above moderate income, or what are basically not income restricted units in Burlingame, do end up being affordable to a moderate income household. So we looked at the rent rolls for both the Bayswater Apartments and the Anson, which was the previous Summerhill development, and particularly the smaller units, the Studios ones and some of the twos, actually do fall within what would be considered a moderate income category. So some of it's a numbers game, but also if you're just looking at how to house the population, we're making some pretty good progress there. But that gives us an unmet need. So these would be the numbers we'd be looking for, and this is maybe where some of the policy decisions come in. We will be over most likely in the above moderate. Most cities are, but we would need to make up for the lower income categories. Why is this important? Who works here in Burlingame? This is a slide that maybe some of you have seen before in some of our previous outreach. Of the workforce here in Burlingame who are serving you at the restaurants, they're working in the hotels, they're all of the different businesses in the offices here downtown, all of that. Nearly 40%, more than a third, are making less than $40,000 a year, or $3,333 a month. And that number, this is a number that's used nationwide as a sort of metric. So if you're wondering why 40,000, this is something that you can look at across the board. Every municipality in the entire country, you can figure out how many people are working at $40,000 or less. Now, if we go back to our area median incomes, we look at San Mateo County area median income is quite high, and yet a big chunk of our workforce is making $40,000 or $19 an hour or less. And those are good, respectable jobs. And if an intention of the housing element is to accommodate some of the workforce here in town, then that's something we want to think about in terms of why are we trying to reach these different income categories. So what is in the housing element? So I won't go through this whole thing as a list. One thing I'll convey is the housing element is not really designed to be read cover to cover. It is not a book. It's a reference manual. Now, you certainly could read it. You may read it cover to cover if you really want to, but typically over the next 8 years, we use this as a reference manual. We can look up the different statistics, the different needs, the profile of the community. It does set the stage for a lot of the policy decisions, and it is a sort of rule book for the state to review our housing element. But this is a way of saying, don't feel bad if you did not read the whole thing. That's okay. That's what these slides are for. There's also the appendices, and this is where we really get into the weeds. One appendix looks at the implementation of our previous housing element over the last 8 years. Where have we succeeded? Where have we fallen short? Community outreach is discussed. Appendix C is a very lengthy discussion on affirmatively furthering fair housing assessment, which we'll discuss in a few slides going forward. And then Appendix D is all the nuts and bolts in the sites inventory. So I'll highlight each of these sections just for a few minutes, just to give you an overview. We won't go through everything. In terms of community outreach, we've been talking about housing for quite some time here in Burlingame. If you recall the Burlingame Talks Together about housing that we started in 2017, 2018, you could say that was sort of an unofficial kickoff to our housing element update, because it really did start having a community conversation about housing. And that was also during the general plan update. So I think part of the reason we see the numbers in the general plan to accommodate housing are, some of that could be considered an outgrowth of the community outreach. We did do more recent outreach. You can see here during the pandemic, we have our masks on as we're there on Broadway. looking at maps and such. And we had a few Zoom webinars last year, both for the city of Burlingame, but also countywide as well. Those are on our Housing Element web page. So if anyone's interested in looking at those videos, and they include one that's Housing Element Update 101. So for people that just want the basics, those are quite well produced. What is affirmatively furthering fair housing? Here is the daily post with the kind of headline that you don't want if you want to affirmatively further fair housing. You don't want to be putting all of the housing to the poor areas, as that is their term, not mine. But basically what it's trying to do is create more equal opportunities for the full range of households. A lot of those households we just talked about who are working here in Burlingame, and providing them with great opportunities. The state uses terms high resource and highest resource. And what does that mean? A high resource or highest resource community? It offers proximity to transit, access to high performing schools and jobs, access to amenities, just parks and services, access to healthcare facilities, grocery stores, all the things that somebody needs to live a good life. The good news is all of Burlingame is considered either a high resource or highest resource. So everybody that lives in Burlingame does have the benefit of those great schools, the transit, the amenities, the parks. So that's a great place to start, and not every community kind of has that luxury in terms of where to position housing so that people have access to the same opportunities across the board. Back to our sites inventory, and to go back into a little more detail of that, how do all these numbers work? We've got the different income categories, and then we've got the there's the RHNA, Regional Housing Needs Allocation. We've got our pipeline projects all allocated there based on what was approved for each project. We don't want to forget about ADUs. The state does allow ADUs to be counted towards our housing quotas. However, we need to base our projections. We're anticipating 167 units over the next 8 years. That is an average of what we have seen approved and built in Burlingame. That's kind of the safest bet. The state will take that as basically a justification for including the ADUs. And then they also allow the ADUs to be split by income category based on surveys that they've done, the state has done on occupancy of ADUs, the percentage of very low, low, moderate, and above moderate income households. It's basically a 30-30-30-10 split between very low, low, moderate, and above moderate. Last but not least are what are called the key vacant or non-vacant sites. Those are those additional sites that we need to include in our housing element as potential development sites. Sometimes they're called opportunity sites. There's also a buffer, and I want to explain that. Why is there a buffer? And that comes back down to our key vacant and non-vacant sites. All of our key vacant and non-vacant sites are zoned for housing, so we don't need to do any rezonings. However, they are also zoned for other things. So we can't guarantee that there's going to be housing. There may be mixed use, there may be shopping, there may be industrial. It really depends on what the property owner wants to do. They may do nothing. So we do need to have a buffer, and the buffers are based on the kind of allocation of the RHNA allocation based on then the numbers of units that are projected. The fine print is all in the housing element, so I won't bog you down with all of that, but it does create a fairly big buffer, particularly in the lower income. And then in terms of total units, it basically provides a scenario where we can exceed our allocation by 170%. Now, that doesn't mean, and before anyone writes headlines or anything about this, that number 5,525 is not the number we are planning for. And in fact, we are planning for 3,257 units. We'll do an EIR addendum to study that number. The purpose of the buffer is to give us that wiggle room so that should any of these pipeline projects not get built, should one of these vacant, non-vacant sites not get developed as intended, or proposed, that there's still sufficient zoning to get us to 3,257. But I want to make it absolutely clear, we are not proposing for more than 5,000 units in Burlingame. This is simply a way to show a scenario where we do have enough sites zoned for housing. One thing we need to do in the sites inventory is provide an explanation, so fairly detailed information on each site that is proposed, including a rationale. Why do we think that this site might be redeveloped based on information that we have that's publicly available, and also based on track records of similar projects. There are some rules here. So if you're wondering why isn't such and such a site on here, sites smaller than 5 acres or larger than 10 acres are by the state generally considered unsuitable for affordable housing development, unless the jurisdiction can demonstrate that it has a track record of affordable developments on these sizes of lots. In Burlingame, we probably could on the smaller ones, but we are trying to be, relatively conservative here. So there's not a lot of sites less than, and actually that should be half an acre. I apologize. Half an acre, that's a big difference. So half an acre or 10 acres. And generally what that means, if a site is less than half an acre, it becomes a little difficult for an affordable housing project to particularly to be managed. You generally want 100 units or so as a minimum to be viable. Some cases it could be smaller, but not much smaller. And then with 10 acres, it's the complete opposite. It's just what is the likelihood of those being affordable. We don't have any sites larger than 10 acres in Burlingame, so that's not something we need to worry about. So to explain our work, we do show that track record of development. There's some pages in the appendix that go over the projects that have been built or approved and what they replaced. And you've seen a lot of these, some fairly substantial buildings have been replaced with housing. So whereas other jurisdictions, maybe it's hard to believe that an office building might be torn down and replaced with housing, but in Burlingame, we've seen that happen. There's also a overview of the density and unit assumptions for, we basically, again, have to show our work. How many units do we think a particular site will have? So we look at what's been approved in the past and come up with that. One thing we cannot include are density bonuses. So even though we have had a lot of projects approved with density bonuses that have gone above the maximum density, we're not allowed to factor that in. However, that does give us a stronger case for saying we think a lot of projects will build to their maximum density, because that is what we've seen here in Burlingame. What does it mean? Let's say you're a property owner and you're on the site's inventory, or you're not. So if you are on the site's inventory, it is not an entitlement in and of itself. So we know that, I know in the last housing element, people would say, well, why isn't this site on it? I think it should be an opportunity site. That may be fine, but that there's really nothing magic about being designated. This is a scenario where we're showing a kind of believable roadmap of how 3,257 units might get built. But there's nothing special. There's no special entitlement that comes from the designation. On the flip side, it's also not an obligation to build housing. So if, for example, you're an industrial user and you see your site on here and you're saying, I have no intention of building housing, that's okay. That's why we have the buffer is nobody's going to come after you and say you need to close your business and build housing because the housing element shows this as a housing site. It's again, just showing a sample of sites that could be believable for housing should there be a willing property owner and developer. And then on the flip side, if a site is not on the housing element opportunity list or the inventory, that does not mean if it's zoned for housing, you can build the housing. So there's, again, nothing magic about being on the inventory. So there may be particularly sites that are smaller than half an acre that are perfectly good, viable housing opportunity sites. We just haven't put them in the inventory, and that doesn't mean you can't build your housing project. The zoning is already there. So last but not least, policies and programs. And this may be, given that we're in pretty good shape with housing supply, we don't need to do rezonings. We don't have to amend the general plan. It's all I think in terms of production, the city has been quite good. So it gives us a chance to look at what are some of the policies and programs to really make the housing work for the needs of the community. More housing choices, affordable housing, removing barriers, improving conditions of existing housing. So far, so much of what we've talked about is housing production, new construction, but we're also looking at the existing stock, preserving that affordable housing where it exists, and then affirmatively furthering fair housing opportunities. The goals, the policies and programs follows what may be a familiar hierarchy. There's the goal, which is the big idea. So that's kind of, we want affordable housing. That's the goal. A policy would be something that starts to get into a more specific statement that guides that decision making. So, we have a policy that a certain percent of units will be affordable. And then programs are the implementation measures, such as, okay, how are we going to implement that policy? We're going to do a nexus study that allows us to kind of make that change. We're going to change the ordinance. We're going to, what's the actual path forward? And then there needs to be accountability. And this is something the state is looking for more so than in years past. So we're needing to tighten up our policies and programs, provide more structure and definitive goals. So there are 3 priority levels: high, which is things that can be done in the first couple of years; medium, these are things that are, probably within a 4-year time frame, give or take; and low. And, we hesitate to use any of these terms because, probably everything is a high priority, but we have to be realistic in terms of what can be done by staffing levels, by what's realistic with the development community, what are things the city can control versus can't. And that kind of drives a lot of this prioritization. Just some of the new policies that we've introduced, and this is coming out of our outreach from the last year. One thing we want to look at is a commitment to environmental justice. So this is a new program, and in Burlingame, environmental justice really relates very specifically to the relationship of housing to pollution more than anything, hazardous materials, and really roadways. So that's something we want to address. The city will be doing an environmental justice element to make sure we're not putting housing in places where it will be exposed to bad elements. Childcare facilities is very important. So there's a new program that will look at including childcare facilities in whether it be residential, commercial, or industrial developments. There's a pressing need for that. And then housing, a new one for putting together our advocates with the people with developmental disabilities. There is an overlap with the income category. So there's a real need for providing units that are suitable for persons with developmental disabilities, but also affordable to extremely low income households, because those are often 2 of the same. So that's something new that we want to really drill down into. You will see this term extremely low income, and that is a subset of very low income. So if you hear that kind of out and about, that's where that term comes from. So that's a lot of me talking. What are our next steps? The public draft was released on December 28th. It's required to be out for public review and comment for 30 days. During that time, we're here on January 9th. This is an opportunity for the public to hear about the housing element and provide comments. Next week will be the city council on Tuesday. Don't forget Monday's a holiday. So Tuesday, it will be very similar presentation to what you just seen and a further opportunity for comments. And then we have till January 27th for people to submit comments, either through Joe Sanfilippo, our economic development and housing specialist, and his email is there at the bottom. There's also contact information on our housing element webpage at burlingame.org/housing element. Once the close of the public review, January 27th, we have all of 10 days to make the edits. I don't know where that comes from, but we have 10 days to do it. And then we ship it off to HCD, which is the state's Housing and Community Development Department. and then they will look at it, and they have up to 90 days to review our first draft and give us comments back. So there's still a road ahead. Also lots of opportunities for input. So I know this is a lot of information, and this is the housing element. There's a lot here. So you may, if you think of whether this is commissioners or members of the community, if you think of things after this meeting, please do send us public comments to either Joe Sanfilippo or through the website or here in the meeting. We will take those comments into the record as well. So with that, I'm available for questions and for the commission discussion.
Thank you, Kevin. Does anyone have any questions? Or does anyone, Vice Chair Pfaff?
I'm not sure if there are questions. Well, maybe there are questions. Well, let's see. I guess I'll go backward first. So I did read this thing. Not the addendums, didn't do that. But one thing I don't understand, and maybe you can explain the logic, or if it's just kind of something the county has decided for whatever reason, or the state. The issue of condo conversion. So I'm looking at page HE 126. It says, oh gosh, no, I'm not going to be able to find it. Something about is it not allowing or not? Oh, discouraging condo conversions for smaller buildings. I'm sorry, I can't even believe it.
Sure. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. That's the first one. So can I ask you that first?
Yes, and that's an important policy decision or policy matter, and would be interested in the whole commission's feedback. Currently in the zoning code, condo conversions of apartment buildings of less than 20 units are not allowed. And that is intentional to preserve the rental housing stock. There is a flip side to that, which we have heard through community engagement, which is condos are often the best way to start up the homeownership ladder, and particularly conversions of apartment buildings tend to be lower priced than new construction. So maybe that's not the right policy. So we've heard there's kind of the two flip sides to it. The current policy does discourage condo conversions. I think what the housing element was looking at is maybe finding something in the middle where the number of conversions is relaxed but limited, so there wouldn't be the hard and fast 20 unit rule. But and Joe, correct me if I'm missing some of the nuance here. I know we've kind of gone around on this, but that is one of the bigger policy questions we've kind of gone around on is, do you want a protection policy? Do you want a home ownership promotion policy, or something where you're kind of trying to balance both? You don't have to answer that, but that's what that's all about.
Yeah, I was just confused because we have so many rentals, and it's unusual for a city to have that percentage, and I think they're all different income levels, but so I didn't understand that. And that's something I'd be interested in looking. I mean, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to give you a job, but I think it should be looked at, because if it's like talking out of two sides of your mouth. You want to encourage lower income home ownership, but then that to me, that's the only entry or likely entry in this community. So I would think it should be looked at. And then the other thing was, well, it's sort of the same, the policy, and I heard the council talking about this, I don't know, a year or two ago, about promotion of the naturally affordable, not conversions, but redevelopment or whatever it is, or fixing them and then, making them more affordable than maybe some are. So I was interested in if the policies had been developed. But you guys, you have been very, very busy and you've done an amazing job. So I don't want to bug you about it, but I just can continue to look at that and think that's definitely something that would, it's spaces that already exist and yeah, they have to be upgraded and such, but in the long run, it might be really something that has a place here. And finally, it's a comment because you talked about environmental justice in one of those slides, policies and programs. So I did notice in, I can't even find it here, something about the trees, because I was wondering if the same tree policy exists when you have ADUs and all these building components put onto the lot, if that same tree requirement exists. And I believe I found it. Of course, I can't find it right now, but I think I found it. And I wanted to make a comment that when you talk about environmental justice, I think it's really important that if you're cramming people together, whatever the configuration is, that those people also have a right and should have some greenery and a tree associated, or tree or two, or whatever the requirement is associated with their living environment just there, because not everybody can get to a park easily, or our city is not one of the higher end on as far as having park space, parkland. We're actually not so great. And so I think it's doubly as important that there's public and private trees that do actually get set into these projects. And that to me is also part of environmental justice. So I did just want to make that comment. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes, sorry for the video. I think my computer decided to update without me, and this is one of the side effects. But anyway, I had a question. I've been trying to read this thing cover to cover, but one of my questions is percentage of workers living in Burlingame. Is that a statistic that we're tracking?
I think we can find it. I don't know if it's actually in the housing element, but it may, I don't know. It is something that we can, you can kind of cross-reference the census data to look at. I can't remember exactly how you do it, but it is possible, yeah.
Well, I think it's an important statistic as we are continued to be badgered for housing and affordable housing so that we can provide housing for people to work here. But yet, I'm not sure that that's the way we work anymore. Yes, in the older days, you lived close to where you work. I haven't lived close to where I work in decades. And so I think that as we continue to say that we need to provide all these different levels of housing, I think we need to, and that this is going to reduce traffic and congestion. I think we need to know who's actually living and working in our community. So I think that would be a good one. I too actually was going to jump on the bandwagon of the condo conversion and discouraging. As I read that, I think I agree that I think preserving rental stock is directly opposed to creating entry-level ownership. And I think that, by the fact that we are a litigious state and we've already crushed the condo business through litigation, I think we are now not creating that many entry-level neighborhoods. And I think that this policy of then saying we're not going to allow condo conversions further undermines that. And especially as we're producing vast amounts of rental, which really is not a wealth building tool. It's a wealth discouraging tool. So when we're talking about justice and trying to make the whole community better, I think we're not if we expand the rental market at the cost of ownership market. So that was my opinion on that policy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
One thing I know, I see Commissioner Say's hand up. If we could do questions first and then hear from the public, we want to give the public an opportunity as well. And then have comments, and these are all really good. And I know questions are sometimes comments as well, but in any case, after Commissioner Say, perhaps we can hear from the public.
Commissioner Say?
Thank you. Yes, I just had a few questions. Some of them are kind of stupid questions, but kind of maybe will help all of us understand this whole element better. So the first stupid question is, are the RHNA numbers in essence discouraging ownership? Is it mostly focused on rental units, or is it a combination of rental and ownership, private ownership, but because virtue of the focus on lower income or entry levels, that it tends to be rental units?
Yes, the RHNA is the housing allocations are neutral in terms of whether it's rental or ownership. There may be implied, the lower income, perhaps that skews more towards rental, but that's not to say, somebody would be delighted if it was a lower income purchasing opportunity. So it's either way. And in fact, part of the housing needs assessment is looking at what are the needs of the community. And yeah, for example, if there is a need for more affordable ownership opportunities, that's something that's probably more of a policy than a numbers. But in terms of just the numbers, and part of it is, I'll admit it's not entirely under the city's control. The larger projects tend to be rental, and that's where the money's coming from. That's how they're financed. And whether the city doesn't really decide one way or the other. And these do go through cycles. Sometimes condos are really hot in the market. And then I think what we've seen the last probably decade is more rental construction, but a lot of it also has to do with just the financing market and what kinds of projects get funded.
Okay, thank you. On the looking at the our sites inventory affordability breakdown that was on HE 122, I see that your the ADUs are broken up, divided kind of equally against across three of the lower income categories, and then at 50 units each and 17 units at above moderate, totaling our 167 units thus far. Where did those numbers come from in terms of allocating them towards those categories?
Those come from a formula that the state has provided. And I believe the state did some studies. I don't know if it's, through the Turner Institute or one of these kind of think tanks, but they did an assessment of who's living in ADUs, what kind of income categories are there, and said, grossly speaking or generally speaking, this kind of allocation is what we're seeing statewide. Now it is statewide. So we may see something a little different in Burlingame, but in terms of kind of filling our table up and allocating units to the different categories, if the state gives us a formula, we'll go for it.
Oh, yeah, I was just curious. I think I'd shared before in a previous meeting that some cities that I work with, actually, there's a questionnaire that you have to answer when you apply for an ADU, and it helps, I think that helps the city to collect that data on how the ADU is being used, so if it's for rental or for a family member or whatever. And I was just curious if we might deploy that type of questionnaire just to know better in our city how the ADUs are being, why are they being developed, and how are they being used.
Yeah, that certainly is an option, and other cities do that, particularly if they're wanting to use a different formula than what the state has provided. So, for example, they say, well, half of our units are very low. The state's going to want to know, well, where did you come up with that? And a survey like what you're describing is kind of providing that kind of evidence. So that is something we did not go that route just because it is more labor intensive, and we went with the formula route, but that is certainly an option as well.
Mhm. Thank you. So I saw in the report, there was just kind of like a one sentence, I think, about how schools, that schools were working with some agency on figuring out how to handle schools and increase classrooms and such for the increased population that will come from all these housing units. How is that being worked on? I'm concerned if suddenly, all these new units show up and then all these youngsters need to go to school and we're not built out to accommodate all of these students. And especially in certain areas, I can think about the North Rollins Road area. There's no school in that nearby area to go to. And so I'm just curious how that's being developed.
Sure. Yeah. So staff has a kind of continuous working group with the school district, and we go over the pipeline projects and let them know what's been approved and what's coming down the pike. The school district over the last few years has seen a decreasing enrollment. So it's the additional units, they feel pretty, I want to be careful to not speak for the school district, so I'm kind of oversimplifying, but the increase in students will be counteracted by the decrease in enrollment that they're already experiencing. Or the flip side is the decrease in enrollment will be bolstered by new students in new housing units. It could present some challenges in geography in that a lot of the housing units we are seeing are on the north end of town. So that may stress some of the particular schools in terms of just being able to accommodate their neighborhood school. But that again remains to be seen, how many students arrive in different units. Are they big units or are they small units? The North Rollins Road area is a little challenging just in terms of access. The schools are physically close, but not directly. One thing we've looked at in that planning area is trying to create some sort of pedestrian connection across the tracks so that kids can get to school more easily. Because it's a little isolated, but I think the capacity can be worked out, but it really comes down to individual enrollment at each school.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Say. I had a couple of quick questions, Kevin, and I'll try to limit it to questions. So how is the low income unit, below market unit, whatever we call them, how is that number established? Is it a percentage of the asking rent?
So it's a formula. So they start with the area median income. And then, so if it's a household at 50%, then whatever the San Mateo County income is, it's halved. So that would be 50%. And then the formula for a household is generally around a third of their income should go to housing. That's ideal. We certainly know there are households in Burlingame and everywhere else that do pay more than a third of their income in housing, but that's not desirable. So the rents are generally set based on the person's salary and what they can afford, based on their employment and then whichever category they're in.
So it's done on a case by case basis, kind of.
It is, yeah. So, and then that area median income number does change every year. So that, that makes it a little difficult because, San Mateo County's income, it's already pretty high, the median income. It does kind of go up and down a little bit. It declined a little bit in the last few years. Now it's back up again. So what would be, half of the median income can change quite a bit over time, probably not hugely in 1 year. But then that also, for people moving into the units, they also are certified every year. So their income is reviewed. Ideally, a project has a range of units, so it's not just one single income category, because people's incomes do change, and ideally you do want them to have a rise in income and not lose their housing. So ideally an affordable housing development will have a range from, say, 30% AMI up to 80 or something, which gives people a lot of room to grow their income, but still maintain their homes. The rent would change based on whatever their income is each year.
Okay, and then, so my last question would be, do we have any statistics or data on how many of those low-income units are occupied?
At the moment, we don't have any available yet. So in terms of what's in the city's housing stock, and those would be lower income units that are deed protected. So the first batch will be the Village at Burlingame, which if you've been by there lately, it's almost done. It's getting there. The tarps are off, and we're hoping people will be moving in by this summer. So that'll be our first chance to really check the occupancy. Units up until now have been only in the moderate income category. Those have taken longer to rent. The moderate income category is rather difficult in San Mateo County because it's so close to market that what is the incentive to save a couple $100 to move in, but then you have to go through all the certification and everything. And they may just rent a regular unit. So those tend to take a little longer to rent, but particularly the 1s and 2s tend to rent pretty easily. The studios and the larger units have a little harder time renting in that category.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I had. Does anyone else on the commission have any questions for Kevin? No, I don't see any hands. So can we open this up to the public?
Let's see, I see Kenneth Doe, and Mr. Doe, I will unmute you if you would like to talk.
Okay. Good evening, Planning Commissioner. My name is Kenneth Doe. I'm a field rep for the Carpenters Union Local 217, representing thousands of construction workers living throughout San Mateo County. Did I push play?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's me.
Oh.
I need to press that.
Oh,
Keep
sorry.
going.
I'm encouraged by the idea of bringing more development like this to our community because greater density makes the property more accessible and benefits the people that want to live and work in Burlingame. The housing element is great because it provides housing for all income level. However, before granting approval to any developer, there needs to be some labor standard in place. Labor standard would ensure contractors pay fair wages, use experienced, well-trained workers. This leads to a higher quality workmanship, meeting building standard, and completing the project quickly. Prevailing wage, support for a viable apprenticeship program, healthcare for construction workers, and a workable local hire are all critical elements to ensuring the city of Burlingame has and will have in the future the workforce necessary to build the housing this community desperately needs, while achieving and even exceeding the policy goals outlined in the housing element. The NorCal Carpenter Union believes that strong language and a labor commitment on the following policy areas will enhance Burlingame's general plan and its vision for its future. For all these reasons, the Carpenter urged the city of Burlingame adopt these labor standards as a requirement for any developer planning to build in our city. We look forward for your support and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public who would like to speak? Do you have any hands
I'm
raised?
not seeing any more hands.
And do we have any
and-
communication?
Let's see, anything in,
Yeah, it looks like there is one comment that was just submitted via public comment.
Okay.
I can go ahead and read that, Kevin, if you want me to.
sure.
All right. Hi, I want to comment on item 6A. I am glad Burlingame is ahead of the game regarding the housing element. but I'm saddened by some of the positions I've heard expressed tonight. Families are getting smaller and more people choose to be single or childless. There are lifestyle choices and shouldn't be judged as lesser than someone who owns a 3-bedroom single family home. Home ownership should be an option for folks who choose that path, but it's a myth that home ownership is always a smart financial decision. This has been addressed in publications like the Wall Street Journal and Barron's. Anecdotally, Elon Musk recently announced that he no longer wants to own a home. There are a few scenarios in which it would be a good idea to convert rental stock into condos. Finally, workers should be able to live near where they work, certainly in the same city. 70% of workers still have to commute daily to their workplace, and this was submitted by Ethan Rebellos. And there are no other public comments submitted via email.
Okay. Then if there are no, I don't know if I need to close the public hearing for any comments that people might have. Yeah. So I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, do you have any comments on this study item? Vice Chair Foss.
I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. It's more of a, well, actually don't know. I don't know if I'll just ask it or comment, and then maybe you can figure out what to do with it or not. This is very specific with regard to the when we have the JDUs inside of a project, and it's very challenging to figure out what can be commented on and what cannot. And I do find it difficult to, we've had actually a few of these where I think they can actually be improved upon, but we're not, there's a confusion over what is allowable to talk about. And I was just wondering if this could be looked into actually with, I don't know, some state official or whoever your local, I forgot all the names, the local housing, these groups that seem to be abreast of all this. I just find it really difficult. I don't know how other cities deal with it, and maybe other cities don't have the design review like we do, but I think it's, I would just like a little bit more guidance rather than not being allowed to talk about them at all. Because I think it's not that we're trying to discourage them, it's that we would like the finished product to kind of have a unifying look. I think that's all anybody wants. Anybody on this commission wants that there to be attractive projects. And so I don't find that a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. So I just want to comment if there could just be a way to figure out, I don't know if it's for this document or another document, or maybe a design review amendment or something. I just don't know. So that's my comment. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands, but I have a quick comment or two. So I've had a little bit of experience in low-income units because I built a apartment building for a client who had one unit, but they were having a really difficult time renting that unit and keeping someone in there. And I don't know if there's some ways to get some of this workforce or these lower income families or individuals into those units. But that's why I have those questions about the occupancy of these lower units, because I don't know. I mean, I get it that their projects are getting approved with lower income units, but are they actually getting rented out? Because I don't know. I mean, if you go to the Anson website, a 1-bedroom is between $3,000 and $4,000. Are they really renting a 1-bedroom for $1,800 to somebody who's in the lower income level? I mean, I don't know. So I think there needs to be some sort of tracking of that information. And my other comment would be that I think we need to do something to get more of these lower income units into these projects, because that's where we're lacking the most. And if we have to make it all up in the end, we're going to end up with those, what was on the post was some undesirable area where we have all this low income housing. And I think we're trying to mix it. So I don't know if there's a way to get more of this low income into these larger projects, especially that are coming up. But I mean, not that it's a terrible thing to have a whole bunch of low income people together, but I think we're trying to mix it. And that's the whole point of all this, if I'm not mistaken. So to me, it looks like we're going to fall short on those low income units. So I think that we should look into that a little bit. That's the only comments I had, and I don't see any other hand. Would anyone else like to make any comments? Then I will close this item.
Oh,
there
sure,
is-
we do, if you don't mind, we
Yeah.
would like a motion on if you would like
that's
to
right, we
forward
need to
this
make a motion.
with the recommendation that the city council forwarded to HCDs.
Right, okay, so would anyone like to make a motion on this item? Well, I'll make a motion. I would make a motion that we approve this. I guess we would approve this housing element and forward it to the city council for their consent. Is
I'll
that good?
second that motion.
So was the motion to make a recommendation that the city council forward this draft of the housing element to HCD?
That was what I was gonna say. I was just trying to be brief.
Yeah, thank you. Chair Gall.
Okay, so we have a motion by Chair Gall, second by Commissioner Camerado. Any discussion on the motion? No, then let's have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Pfaff,
Aye.
Chair Gall.
Aye, so the motion passes 6-0-1, and is that appealable?
Not appealable.
No, not appealable. Okay. All right. Thank you for the presentation, Kevin, and thank you everyone for your time on that item. We will move on to agenda item number 7, the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine. They are acted on simultaneously unless separate discussion and/or action is requested by the applicant, a member of the public, or a commissioner prior to the time the commission votes on the motion to adopt. We have 2 items on the consent calendar tonight, 1915 Carmelita and 912 Linden Avenue. Would any member of the public or the applicant like to pull either of these items for discussion, or would any member of the planning commission like to pull either of these items for discussion? Commissioner Camerado, I see a hand up.
Yeah, I just am going to recuse from item 7B, so I think we have to vote on them separately.
Yes, we will. Thank you. Commissioner Say, you have a question?
Same thing, because I have to recuse from item 7A, so we'll need to vote separately.
All right, and I see one other hand, Vice Chair Pfaff.
Yeah, I don't, I guess it's a question I have, so I don't know. I guess I need to pull it. It's regarding 912 Linden. Do you want me to give you the question, or do we?
Yeah, why don't we have
Okay.
the question, and then maybe Assistant City Attorney Spansdale can help us out if we need to pull it.
Sure, if it's a procedural question, we might be able to answer it, but if it's a question about the project, we should just pull the item.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a question about conflicting materials listed.
I would recommend that you make a motion to, or not make a motion, but ask that the item be pulled and we can consider it. It can be a very short item.
Okay, then I would ask that it be pulled. Thank you.
Okay, and that's 7B 912 Linden.
Mm.
And do we have that discussion right now?
We'll do the
No.
consent calendar first, 7A 1915 Carmelita, and we'll have to take out Commissioner Say for this vote, or can she
Yeah.
just black out her video?
She could just black out her video.
Okay, so we're looking for on the consent calendar, one item at the moment, 1915 Carmelita Avenue. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the consent calendar with 1915 Carmelita Avenue.
Okay, I was looking for somebody's lips to be moving, and then I thought, okay, no, it's John. Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Schmidt. I'll second that motion. Any discussion on the motion? Nope. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Vice Chair Pfaff,
Aye.
Chair Gall.
Aye. So that's 1915 Carmelita. Passes by a vote of 5-0-1.
011.
An action by the planning commission is appealable to the city council within 10 days of the planning commission's action. If the planning commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the city council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $745, which includes notice and costs. Congratulations. All right, so we will pass on item number 912 Linden, and that will be posted for a future meeting.
No, we will hear that now.
Okay, we'll
Chair
hear it
Gall.
now.
So we
Okay.
can pull that now. We could have a staff report if you believe a staff report is necessary, or we could just go straight into the question and have staff answer the question.
Yeah. Okay, well,
But we do have to open it up for public comment.
Yeah.
To make sure that everyone has a chance to talk.
Okay.
okay. Then I'm just going to ask, I just noticed when I was going through this that on page, it's with regard to the material for the front door on page A5 and A5.0, the front door is shown as masonite. And on page A4.1, the materials show it as a fiberglass. And I don't know, I mean, I'm going to defer to those who build in the group, but isn't fiberglass different than masonite? And what actually are they using? That's all I wanted to ask.
Was the applicant present?
Yes, we'll bring the applicant in a second here.
And Chair Gall, if you want to, you can open the public hearing to allow the applicant to speak, and then we can take in other public comments after.
I will open the public hearing. Is the applicant present?
There are 3 hands raised. Miranda was first. And maybe Miranda, you can let us know if you need Aaron Hollister and Hannah Chu in as well.
Hi, good evening. Yes, Hannah and Aaron can come on.
Okay.
It's a pretty simple question to be answered. I'm a senior development manager at Thomas James Homes, and Masonite is the brand of the door, and it is a fiberglass front door,
Got it.
as seen previously. That has not been changed.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. No worries. Thank you.
Okay, then if that answers the question, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any comments by the commission, or would someone like to make a motion?
Well, I'll move to, I held everybody up. I'll move to, I guess, approve this item on the consent calendar. Approve it. Yes.
Second that motion.
Congratulate. Yes. And
So we have a motion by Vice Chair Pfaff and a second by Commissioner Haran. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Pfaff,
I,
Chair Gall.
Aye. So the motion passes 5-0-1-1. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. An action by the planning commission is appealable to the city council within 10 days of the planning commission's action. If the planning commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the city council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $745, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations. All right, that brings us to our regular action items. Our first item is item 8A, 1353 Columbus Avenue. If you are the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communication regarding this project?
I will be recusing from this project since I'm doing another project with this group.
Okay, thank you. No other recusals. Let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, this is an application for design review for a new 2-story single unit dwelling and detached garage at 1353 Columbus Avenue, zoned R1. The subject property contains an existing 1-story single unit dwelling and a detached garage. The applicant is proposing to demolish all structures on the site and build a new 2-story single unit dwelling and new detached 1-car garage. The project proposes a total floor area of 3,222 square feet, where 3,264 square feet is the maximum allowed. Planning staff would note that the previously requested special permit for building height has been eliminated. The building height was reduced by 1 feet 6 inches from 31 feet 5 inches to 29 feet 11 inches to comply with the maximum allowed building height of 30 feet. The new dwelling would contain 3 bedrooms, 2 parking spaces, one of which must be covered, are required for a 3-bedroom house. The new detached garage provides the required covered parking, and 1 uncovered space is provided in the driveway. At the Planning Commission Design Review Study meeting on November 14th of 2022, the Commission had several suggestions regarding this project. The applicant submitted a response letter dated December 12th and revised plans date stamped December 9th to address your comments. Suggested findings for design review are found on page 3 of the staff report, and proposed conditions of approval are found on pages 4 and 5. This concludes my summary of the staff report.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? I don't see any hands. All right, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about the project? Oh, sorry, you're muted, I think.
Hi, sorry about that. Good evening. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Hannah. I'm a planner with Thomas James Homes. I did have a very brief presentation just going over the comments and how they were addressed. If you wouldn't mind if I did that now.
Yes, please.
Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as mentioned before, my name's Hannah. I'm with Thomas James Home. We previously presented this project on November 14th. I'm just going to briefly go over what we addressed. So to start, we've added the slope at the front of the proposed home. This is shown on sheet A3.1. We've also added the materials legend on all the elevations. The roof of the home has been revised to have a lower roof pitch from top of curb to top of ridge, as mentioned by planning staff there, no longer requiring a special permit request. The roof height went from 31 feet 5 inches to 29 feet 11 inches. Once again, materials legends was also added to clarify. The windows have been revised. These are the windows in the rear from the primary bedroom. They've been revised to be centered above the multi-slide door below to provide symmetry. The visual you see above is our revision. The visual below is our previous design. So the drop zone in the rear portion of the home has been pulled in so that the second floor now provides an overhang as protection over the rear door. The outline of the second floor is shown, and then the highlighted yellow. And the drop zone is outlined in red. Our second floor overhang is highlighted in yellow here. Gable venting was suggested. However, since we meet our venting requirements through Eve and O'Hagan's, we opted to keep the existing siding treatment at the gable to keep a clean look. We felt that adding the ventilation would conflict with the look that we're trying to go for here. There was a comment that the electrical shaft would be better placed inside the wall. So we've done that here, no longer being seen on the side of the home. And previously, our home had 8-foot windows, but it was mentioned that that's not typical in Burlingame. So we have revised the porch windows to have a header height of 7 feet 6 inches to align with the front door and to feel more scaled to the roof. And then 1 inch has been removed from the plate heights for gypboard. So now standing at 8 and 9 feet even. Sorry, mix up here. So this is the this is the 9 foot, 8 foot, you can see. And so that concludes my presentation. Once again, Erin Hollister, Miranda Clark, and myself from Thomas James are here to answer any questions that may come up. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant? I don't see any hands. I have a couple of questions. On your materials legend on sheet A 3.0, you have fiberglass windows. I think that we had a discussion about those previously. Are those in fact fiberglass, or are they like a Fibrex product? I'm not sure where we're headed with this material.
Could I point that question to my team member, Miranda Clark?
Sure.
I don't know if she's able to speak.
Give us a sec. She's just coming in as a panelist.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, good evening again. My name is Miranda Clark at Thomas James Homes, and for the fiberglass windows, they are in fact fiberglass and they are Marvin, all Ultrex.
Oh, okay.
And that is with SDLS grids as well, because that may come up.
Okay. And then my only other question is, and I don't know if you guys have anything else in the area. I was wondering, I mean, I'm not familiar necessarily with this combination of materials on your palette. Do you have any homes in the area completed that you've used this same palette of materials on that we could look at?
Yes, we do, and I would be happy to send you a list of those.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
That was the only questions I had. Does anyone else have questions of the applicant? I don't see any hands from the commission. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on this item?
I'm not seeing any hands raised, and we have no public comment emails.
Okay, then I am going to close the public hearing.
I did have one quick
I'm sorry.
question. I couldn't get to my
Okay.
hand raising thing fast enough. Can you tell us what profile Muntin you've selected for this project on the windows?
Wow, Mutton. Miranda, do you have an answer for that? Sorry.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
I was
Profile.
just
for
wondering
window.
which Muntin profile detail you've selected for this project?
What is the word you're saying after window?
The grids, what profile that the grids have? Is
Oh,
there like
okay. They are a I know they're the SDLS, so you have your simulated divided light between the grid. So it looks more like a traditional older style window that had fixed panes of glass between. But we usually go with the flat style because up on the second floor, you can't usually tell what the profile is from the ground, but we'd be willing to change profiles if that's necessary.
I think that you'll find it be a richer exterior if you actually have a profile on it. I'm not from, I mean, I am familiar with Marvin Windows. I don't know all their profile style names, but maybe that could even just be an FYI or something to us if this project is approved.
Something like the ovalo or the OG shape on it, I think. Just so it gives it a little bit more relief than a flat square. Is that what you're looking for, Commissioner Say?
Yes, exactly. I just didn't know which profile names they have.
And I'm not sure if those are the correct ones, but that's what I always call them.
Yeah.
If I may, could I ask how you think that is something that is necessary from a perspective when someone walking on a street or walking by doesn't quite differentiate that? In my architectural career, I haven't had anyone distinguish that before. I'm sure you've come along with that at some point, Commissioner Say, so I'd be interested in learning from you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that we very typically in this city, a lot of the homes, you know, we're very proud of our architectural heritage in this city. And so a lot of the homes that have some more traditional detailing or classic detailing often have a profile on those Muntin grids. It just provides some shadow relief from a distance. That flat profile tends to look like, you know, those really cheap tape-like looking grids. And of course, you can identify that there's a grid on the windows from afar, but that profile just adds this richness to the exterior. So we often see that prescribed on a lot of our homes here in the city.
That's great. Thank you for that explanation. And that is why we do provide SDLS grids rather than DBG or grids between class to help with that profile.
Yeah, if you could consider that or take a look at that, because I don't think there's really much cost difference in choosing a profile.
Just specifying it. Yeah, that's definitely something we'd look into. Just looking for your expertise on why you mention it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Through the chair, if you decide to go with an approval, we would recommend you include that as a condition of approval, and staff can ensure that that gets implemented during the building permit review stage. And you can specify it as a traditional profile grid for the windows, something of that nature.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments? Vice Chair Pfaff.
Yeah, well, I'm really very pleased that my fellow commissioner mentioned the grids. I hadn't noticed that because it's not there. So I don't think we do those flat ones anymore. Those were like very early versions of artificial grids, I think from like 20 years ago. And I think the reason is exactly as she said, that it just is a richness you get with the shadow. And it sort of reinforces the idea of I think like permanence. It's something really important. So I would absolutely think that that's essential on this project. And I just wanted to comment that I actually appreciate your very interesting landscape trees. You have a pin oak in the front. They're kind of unusual, but they're kind of interesting, and I look forward to seeing them. A pin oak, and then you have I don't know, something really unusual in the back. But they're substantial trees, and I think your neighbors will appreciate them, and hopefully they'll grow nicely. So those were my comments. I appreciate that you've paid attention to things that have been said along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just follow up on that window comment. I'm not 100% sure if it's an OG shape on the Ultrex or the, actually, I think they're called Elevate now from Marvin, but it is at least a beveled Muntin bar. So maybe we can get an FYI on that as they get a little bit further into this project, so we get a profile and we know exactly what they are going to be using on this thing. Commissioner Schmidt, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I appreciate the changes and updates being made to the project, and that Thomas J. Holmes is working to, develop better projects and adhere to our design guidelines. If this were actually a modern house, then maybe the flat muttons would be something to talk about. But in reality, being a craftsman, I would expect that they actually do have more of a profile to them. And so I highly recommend that they update that. But otherwise, I think the changes have been good. Thanks.
Okay, great. Commissioner Haran, did you have your hand up, or did you want to say something?
I was going to say what he just said, which is I appreciate the applicant making the changes and paying attention to the feedback over the last couple of meetings. So I think it's approvable from my perspective.
Okay. I just had one other comment, and this may be nitpicky, and I don't know if anybody's going to nod with me or just tell me I'm ridiculous, but I found these plans a little bit difficult to sort through, being that they're printed on the fronts and the backs of the pages. It's because I'm trying to compare some things and I'm flipping things around. So again, I'm not trying to, nitpick here, but to me, it was a little bit, I would never get a set of plans in the field to work with that were printed on both sides. So it's I'm not used to it. Anyways, something to think about. I still see Commissioner Schmidt's hand up, or do you have another comment or question?
Sorry, no, it just didn't go down.
Okay. I hate it when that happens. Okay, would anyone like to make a motion? I'll make a motion. A motion for approval of the project with the conditions as stated in the staff report, with the additional condition that we get an FYI for the style of the window grids, as probably as sooner than later would be good.
I second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Chair Gall, second by Commissioner Say. Any discussion on the motion?
Through the chair, just a point of clarification. Did you want us to bring that back as an FYI, or write it as a condition that it have a traditional profile for the Muntins, and then that staff can review that? We're just trying to make the process most efficient, and we have samples that we can show them, real life samples in our office that we can.
Because I'm not 100% sure. Marvin's changed their line and their name of their line over the last couple of years, so I don't know all the profiles that are available, but I know it's not. They have them that are not flat, and I think they may just have a bevel on them. But that would be fine if we made that a condition of approval.
Okay. Yeah, we're fairly familiar with those profiles, and we can certainly convey that message to the applicant, and then ensure that that gets incorporated as part of the building permit package.
Thank you. And I see a hand by Vice Chair Pfaff.
Yeah, gosh. So on the profile, if we're actually going to do that, some of these profiles, I noticed that on this particular project, there are two rather small windows at the top on the second story. I guess that's a bedroom. And I think it is probably important to make sure that the profiles and the actual I guess the width is not too fat too wide for those windows. You're going to use the same ones, I presume, all over the house. So it's just sort of be careful of that, that it doesn't look too clunky for the proportions of those windows up at the top. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. And also, Ruben, I just wanted to add, if we could get an address or two of some local projects that they've completed with a similar material palette.
Yep.
Okay, then can we have a roll call vote, please?
And sorry, the second was that by Commissioner Haran? The second. Oh, Say. Okay.
It was me.
And Commissioner Say, do you agree with
Yes, and I agree with the changes to the motion.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Pfaff,
Aye.
Chair Gall.
Aye. So the motion passes 5-0-1-1. And an action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review to the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $745, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations, and we will move on to action item 8B, 1327 Benito. If you are the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm screwing up here. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? I know that we don't have any recusals on this one. Okay, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep, okay. This is application for a design review amendment for as-built changes to previously approved two-story single unit dwelling with a detached garage at 1327 Benito Avenue, zoned R1. This application was first before the Planning Commission for approval for design review and a special permit for height for a new two-story single unit dwelling with a detached garage, and was approved in March of 2021. A building permit was issued for the project on September 16th, 2021, and staff visited the site on November 9th of 2022 for final inspection, where it was noted that there were several as-built changes that were not consistent with the approved plans. Staff brought forward an FYI for this project for review at the November 28th meeting, and the Planning Commission calls the item up for discussion, and that was before the Planning Commission at the December 12th public hearing. At that meeting, the Planning Commission had several concerns and requests for more information, and voted to place this on a subsequent agenda. The Planning Commission, or the applicant, submitted revised plans, date stamped December 20th, and provided you with a summary letter detailing the changes that will be made to the as-built changes in response to the Planning Commission's comments at the December 12th meeting. Staff has provided a summary for you in the staff report, as well as a summary of the previous project for your reference in the minutes from the previous meetings. We have suggested findings for this amendment before you this evening, as well as 14 recommended conditions of approval. And I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have. Thank you.
Screen is changing on me. Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Vice Chair Pfaff.
Yeah, Catherine, I know that there had been several changes that the inspectors noticed, but it occurred to me that there must have been a landscape plan at some point on this project, and it wasn't in my packet, or maybe, I don't know, I can't see one. I was just wondering if offhand you knew if anything had been landscaped here, actually any plants, or was it too early for that?
No, Park signed everything off, so nothing in the landscape plan is being reviewed or brought forward. These were all changes to the exterior of the building, but Parks is responsible for signing off, and they've already given their approval for that.
Even on the site, on site. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of staff? Commissioner Schmidt?
Yeah. So I have a question about then what Parks approved on site. It's still a dirt lot in front. They haven't done, I was by there this weekend and they haven't done squat with their landscaping.
I'll have to review the notes in the file.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions of staff? No. Then where am I? Then I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I would like to just state one correction. We have done landscaping extensively in the back and front yard. Because I think Commissioner Schmidt, maybe you're mixing with somebody else's a lot because we have landscaped the front. I can show you a picture. It's totally landscaped.
Okay, then maybe that's my mistake and I went by another site. Sorry.
Yeah. And it's been approved as the Catherine mentioned, that it's been approved by Urban Forestry. Thank you for your comments last time. We went and researched all the comments, and I worked with many of the vendors in order to provide solutions. My letter provides the summary of the solutions. The windows, I've consulted with Jeld-Wen, the manufacturers, and their solution for SDLS is these grills that clip. I don't know if you can see it, but they clip on the frame. They don't glue on the glass. This is the other type that people usually use. These have a sticky tape on the back. We're not using this. And these have beveled profile. I'm not sure if you can see it here, but I mentioned in the letter that it's 7/8 by 3/8 profile. So these will be added on both sides of the windows. And actually, Jeld-Wen, if I ordered new sashes with SDLS simulated divided light, they will ship me the same thing. They will ship me sashes with these grills. So it's the same solution. So we will do that to match the plan that was submitted on December 20th. The second item was the front door. We will change the door to match the originally approved door, exactly the approved door. As far as the window, the bedroom number 1 on the right, that has a GBG. They have the grill inside the glass. So what we will do, we will add the same grill on both sides. So it becomes SDLS basically. So and it will match the same grill that is on the door right now. A third item was the front columns that are not tapered, and we will change those columns to tapered ones to match the originally approved plan. Fourth item was the garage door. We will order a wood raised panel with no windows, and we will change that to match the originally approved plan. There are some missing outriggers on the garage front. We will add those outriggers according to the original approved plan. And then one last comment was on the lights on the left side of the left elevation. So we will remove 2 lights that were on the electric plan, but not on the elevation to match the elevation. And we'll change the light to be a shining down light, so no disturbance to the neighbors. So this is a summary of my changes, and I think I'm hoping for your approval of these changes.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant? Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes, thank you for the changes. And I'm looking on A21, which is the site development plan. and noticing a handrail. And then when I look at the elevations, I'm not seeing any handrail and I'm not seeing any mention of what it's made of. Are you doing a steel or cast iron kind of handrail for the steps?
This is the front elevation or the back, the side
Front.
elevation?
Front for your steps going down to the side, to the main sidewalk.
Oh, you're right. It's not shown, but you know, the building department requires a handrail for if you have more than 3 steps, you have to have a handrail. We already installed it. Yeah, I guess the staff in James' office missed adding it, but it's a metal iron rail.
Fine. And then one of the other comments I had with the last meeting was the trellis over the entry door. I'm not seeing any mention of how to correct that beam that goes into the door that just looks like it's hanging there.
Yeah, I think from one angle, it looks like it's hanging. And I discussed this with James. It's actually built as approved. There were no changes there. What's behind it is structural beam that's holding the roof. So it's very difficult. I mean, I asked him for any such, I asked James to bring me any suggestion that we can, you know, to make it a little bit more appealing. The only thing he could think of is if we paint everything gray, then it would look like it's continuous. But I mean, I really don't like that. But if that's the only solution, you know, we'll do it. But he cannot mess up with the structural beam and post that's holding the roof behind that.
Okay.
Okay, could you, I'm having trouble with the window grids. So those window grids are gonna basically just kind of snap into the sash, as if you will,
into the frame. They clip on the frame
on the outside.
Well, we are applying them to both sides, so they will clip on the outside frame and the inside frame. So there will be 2 of these. One goes on the outside, one on the inside.
Right, but they're not attached to the glass at all, so they potentially could have a bow in them, or they could warp a little bit.
You know, it could, but all the windows are not that wide. They're like 2 feet, 24 inches. So I think we'll be safe. They did. I mean, the manufacturer did not recommend adding glue. We could add glue, but I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that they're just going to stay on there, or that, you know, even after approval, they could simply be removed. The whole point was that it's supposed to.
They go into the wood. They clip on the wood, inside the wood. So I mean, you have to. I mean, anything you install, you can remove, of course, but with the force, yeah, you can remove it. But this is going into the wood.
Well, yeah, I mean, we asked also in provide details on how the product would be physically attached to the windows and explain the process. To me, this sounds like they're just going to snap on, which means they're going to also snap right off. And I don't know that I'm satisfied with that as a solution to this problem. I just. I'm
not sure what you mean by snap, because once it goes into the wood, I mean, if you leave it, it will leave a hole in the wood. That will damage the window.
Are the windows wood, or are they clad metal on the exterior?
They're metal clad. They're wood clad.
Yeah. So,
but if you take it out, it will leave a hole that will damage the window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I think we were, asking for something from the manufacturer that shows how these are actually going to attach. I'm familiar with snap-in grids. That used to be a way that things used to go on. They would put them, people would put them on, then they could take them off, and they can wash the whole window and put them back on. they just don't hold up. So, okay. And I agree with Commissioner Schmidt that that one what do you call it? Piece of the awning out in front, it does look completely tacked on. I don't know. There's got to be a solution. There's got to be a way to make that look better. But I mean, I can go along with most of what you're proposing here. I'm having trouble with the grids on the windows. Anyways, I will. Those are my questions. Commissioner Camarado.
Yeah, so I almost would prefer the windows to stay as they are versus putting those grids on. I worry that it'll cheapen the look of the windows themselves than trying to put these grids on. The other alternative ultimately really is to replace all the windows, and I personally don't think that we should. I don't agree that we should do that. I don't think I'm speaking for myself. I think that either keep the windows as is and let that piece go, or do the snap-ons. And I look to my fellow commissioners to their opinions on the windows, and I do appreciate the rest of the changes that have been made and the work that the applicant is willing to do to make this right. So I do appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant? I don't see any hands. Okay, is there anyone in the public who'd like to comment on this item?
We do have one speaker, Carol. We'll allow Carol to speak, and there are no public comment emails.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for your time again. And I enjoyed listening into the meeting last December. Regards to the windows. The window on the left-hand side, which would be off the driveway, and it appears to be the kitchen, is much wider than all the rest of the windows. And again, that window faces the bathroom. So I think I brought this up. So if I'm taking a shower and someone's in that kitchen, they're probably going to be able to see what's going on. And that was also an area where the lights were left on. And last week, the lights were left on upstairs. And I contacted Joe about 2 o'clock in the morning by text and told him his lights were on upstairs. And he answered me back saying, oh, well, I was there. I must have left it on. Okay, that's good enough. But, we're going through the same thing. The next thing I want to bring up is your minutes dated March 8th, 2021. In regards to the trees, and we're bringing up the tree issues. The tree in the back is a palm tree, and it was an existing one. And when the home was being trashed, knocked down, this tree was just left there, was not attended, was not even landscaped. It was just like left alone in the corner. Then once the house was built and the backyard was starting to come alive, and this tree now becomes the center point of the backyard. I've submitted over to comments a photograph of what the tree looks like. The tree has yellow looking leaves going through it. So that appears to be that tree was not maintained at all. In the front part of the house, if you look forward on the right side where the easement is, the walkway, there's all these old trees that were there before. And there's a planter box. Is that on the property, or is that the city walk box area behind to block the house from the easement? So if that's so, those trees don't look good either. And I just, it's terrible. And then again, the driveway on the next property at 1323, when the guys put in the pavers, they chipped away all this extra concrete, But what he did was they just painted the property the same color as the 1327 building, which is blue-gray. So the homeowner at 1323, it's got this long driveway, color gray, that doesn't even match his house. Now, when someone's coming down the street, it's going to stop them right dead tracks. Oh, this is a house we're going to go to. So I've submitted some comments over to, I think it's Catherine.
I think 3 minutes is over.
Thank you. I'll run the meeting. Can you finish up?
Myself.
Yeah. Are you
Okay.
finished with your comments?
Yeah, all I want to say is I sent all this information over to Catherine with photographs, with the trees and all the business. So
Okay.
you'll be able to see everything.
All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to speak on this item? All right. I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments? Well, Commissioner Haran.
Yeah, thanks. You know, I maybe echoing Commissioner Camerado, I think the applicant made a mistake, made a lot of mistakes. I think he listened to all the feedback from the previous meeting. He's addressed 80 plus, maybe 90%. I think it's enough's enough at this point. I think, you know, I could go either way on the window dividers, but at this point, I think it's time to approve this project.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, I will again voice my frustration with people deviating from the plans on such items that are really, they're kind of big items to me. This sends a different, you know, it's a different house than what was approved. You know, I mean, I agree that some of the stuff that's going to be changed is going to help. I'm really on the fence as whether the window should be changed or not. I get it that the front door is going to be changed, the garage door is going to be changed, the columns are going to be changed. Again, I think that the trellis over the entry is incomplete. I don't know. I'm disappointed with the end product here. That's, I guess, where I'm standing, and I'm on the fence as to what we should do with the windows. I'm leaning more towards having them replaced, but I'd like to hear from other commissioners as well. Commissioner Haran, you have your hand up again.
Yeah, I guess, you know, my view is when I see the property in person, it's not a bad looking house. It might not be what we've approved, but the house fits the neighborhood. It's a good looking house. And as you said, you went through all the things that he's agreed to replace. I think replacing all the windows is a bit onerous and not necessary, given that the house looks good.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Say.
Yeah, thank you. So I am too also not satisfied with the grid solution. But at the same time, when I look at the house as it is now, I'm not as bothered that the grids are not on the windows. And surprisingly, actually, in person, they look better than they did on the drawings that were sent to us last time. And I just feel I'm equally frustrated, of course, with developers or builders who are not following the approved drawings and putting us in this position to, you know, essentially waste our time, you know, for 2 nights of planning commission meetings to discuss this. So frustrated with that, but nonetheless, I feel like it's, from a sustainability perspective, not a very responsible thing to do to, you know, basically throw away all these windows and replace them with new. So if it were up to me, and I agree with Commissioner, with Chair Gall, that those snap-on grids can just as easily be removed after final inspections have, passed and everything. So almost pointless to put them up. So I would probably err on just leaving the windows alone without grids than doing anything else with them.
Thank you. Commissioner Schmidt.
Yeah, echo the same, frustrated that we keep doing this. And I think we need a policy change that holds owners more accountable. But I'm in a kind of an agreement. I think the snap-on grids are going to probably break and fall off. More so than I'm worried about the owner taking them off, because he's going to have to put a hole in the frame to put them in. But we need to move this along, and I do think that he is going back and making a better effort at a lot of those items. And I still agree that the front porch is not complete, and something can be done. So I think he needs to work on that. But otherwise, I still think it needs to move along.
Thank you. Any other commissioners like to comment on this? I don't see any hands. Would someone like to make a motion? Vice Chair Pfaff.
Yeah. I really I'm having a really hard time with this. The comments about from the neighbor, the issue about the landscaping, which I'm sorry I didn't walk way back there. That probably would have been upsetting, but I feel like if we're going to be talking about considering no grids, and I mean, it probably needs some beefed up landscaping, something to make it fit in better. I don't know. It's a completely different house. It just doesn't hold together for me. I don't know. So anyway, that was my comments.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, or would someone like to make a motion? Because it's going to be a complicated motion to go through. They're going to be approved or not approved. I'm going to pass on making a motion because I don't think my motion would fly. So I'll leave this to Commissioner Camerado, who has her hand up.
So I'm going to try to make a motion. I would like to move this to the consent calendar. No, I see Catherine saying no.
This is a regular action item.
Oh, regular
tonight.
action.
Yeah.
Right.
So you could be making a motion to approve the project, for example, making it clear that it does not include the grids or as such.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the project with keeping the windows the way they are. And then for the applicant to come back regarding the trellis by the front door as per Commissioner Schmid's request and Commissioner Gall's. And if the applicant could please look at the landscaping and maybe beef it up just a bit, and provide some details of a couple of additional items of plants that they could add. I see city attorney going to comment.
I just want to make sure that we have a clear motion for the applicant.
Commissioner Camerado froze.
Oh,
Am I frozen?
no, I don't think you froze. I think Chair Gull might have froze.
Froze. Okay, so everyone,
Mike, you're frozen.
my screen is frozen for me, so I don't know what that is.
Okay, so let's just keep it simple then. So I make a motion to approve the project, leaving the windows as they are, and coming back as an FYI for the trellis, and just leave it at that.
I second
guys-
your motion.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm having some trouble with my computer. I think I lost half of your motion, but that's that. You guys were all frozen and I was talking and nothing was happening.
Okay, so you want me to restate it, Mike?
No, because
Okay.
I know where I'm going on this. So we have a motion by Commissioner Camerado and a second by Commissioner Haran, is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Is there any discussion on the motion? I have a question on the motion. The French door on the front porch and the garage door on the side both have internal grids between the glass. What's to happen there?
Well, the garage, Commissioner, I'm sorry, Chair Gall, the garage door is proposed to be removed and replaced with a solid wood door.
But there's a pair of French doors on the side that have internal grids between the glass, the same as the French doors on the front porch.
Those would be, I'm assuming that if the windows were to remain as is, then those would stay as they are originally installed.
With the internal grids between the glass. Okay.
There would be no changes to the windows as installed, not as approved.
Okay. Okay, that was my only question. Are there any other questions or comments about the motion? No, then can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Pfaff,
No.
and Chair Gall.
No. So the motion passes 4-2-1. Okay, and an action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $745, which includes noticing costs. All right, then we will move on to regular action item 9C, 556 El Camino Real. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communication regarding this project? I do not see any hands. No one's recusing, so let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, this is an amendment to a previously approved application for design review, condominium permit, and conditional use permit for review and clarification of requested information for a previously approved 21-unit residential condominium building at 556 El Camino Real, zoned R3. This project was previously approved by the Planning Commission on May 11th, 2020. At that time, a condition of approval was added, which required an FYI to show new privacy materials or designs for the balconies, and to also provide technical specifications for the proposed turf block pavers in the front setback. This information was presented in an FYI to the Planning Commission on December 12th of 2022. The Commission at that time did not accept the FYI and requested that it be placed on a future agenda for further discussion. And that brings us to tonight's meeting. The Commission expressed concerns with the glass specifications and whether there would be irrigation for the landscape turf block to be used in the driveway. The applicant provided plans to show the proposed privacy glass at the side elevation balconies and specifications for the turf block pavers, which also include irrigation and proposed grass species. The applicant is not proposing any revisions to the project approved on May 11th, 2020. Therefore, this review is only limited to the information requested by the Commission and not on any other part of the previously approved project. I did want to just briefly mention the Housing Accountability Act. The Housing Accountability Act limits the ability of municipalities to deny a multi-unit residential project that complies with objective standards, zoning, and subdivision standards and criteria. Those include design review standards in effect at the time the application was determined to be complete. The approved project and also the two informational items being reviewed this evening comply with the applicable objective development standards. Suggested findings are found on pages 6 and 7 of the staff report, and proposed conditions of approval. Mostly those are repeats of the approved project on May 11th of 2020 are found on pages 7 through 15 of the staff report. And that concludes my summary. I believe the applicants are here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff?
Oh.
No. Okay. Then I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project?
Just bear with us. There are a few applicants, so we're letting them in, and there usually is a delay. Okay, when any of the applicants are ready to speak, you can go ahead. Just remember to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, is my video active? I can't tell.
Is this
Andrew Raimundo?
okay?
Yeah.
I don't see. Oh,
You hear me but don't see me?
We can hear you and we can see you. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you. My name is Andrew Raimundo with RSS Architecture. We're the architecture firm on the project, and I think we have a team of people here tonight. We've got the owner's representative, Jane Knopp, Mark Hudak, who represented the project back in May of 2020 when we originally went through planning. And then I've got our landscape architect, Dennis Taniguchi, and some of my staff. So we're here to answer questions about the two items that are under consideration, which my understanding is for the balcony railings and also for the landscaping in the front setback. And I'm going to turn it over to Abby Barada, who's managing the project for our office, to give you some information on what our plans are for the balcony railings.
I think we need to let there. Sorry.
Hey, good evening. Can you hear me and see me?
Yeah.
Hi, good evening, Chairperson Gall and commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. So on the action item with respect to the balcony railings, so we are proposing and implementing clear glass on the front and rear elevations. Front is in front of like El Camino Real Street, and at the back, the rear view would be the bay. And on the sides, we are using obscure glass on the left and right side elevations. For the railing framework, it's all going to be the same throughout. And the only materials, meaning the glass, clear glass in front and obscure glass on the sides, will be different. And if you have any other questions, let us know. Thank you.
thank you.
And then we have, I believe Dennis Taniguchi, who's our landscape architect, will address the turf block issue and the planting material and irrigation system for the turf block as well.
I'll just interrupt. We do have the slides for you. So if you want us to advance the slides and show, I see you have a number of slides, so just let us know how you want to go through those.
Sure.
Sure. If you could please advance the slide, there's a section. I guess the next. There you go. Thank you. So
This is the turf block paver system that's being proposed. It's produced by a company called Basilite. So it's precast concrete laid over an aggregate base. And then the cells are filled with soil. And in those cells, the turf is planted. And it's a sod mix. The next slide, please. Produced by Delta Bluegrass out by Stockton. It's a 90-10 mix of tall fescue. It's tolerant of foot traffic. It has really good heat resistance, which is important in the driveway and with the turf block. It tends to save a bit of water, although as a turf grass, it will use irrigation water. And in terms of the irrigation system, the best way to provide an even and uniform application would be with these overhead pop-up sprays, which you see on the right-hand side. Are there any questions about that?
I don't see any hands. Okay, are there any other questions for the applicants? Vice Chair Pfaff.
Well, it includes the grass and the pavers. There was not a full landscape plan in here, so I just printed the only one that the most recent, which was March, I think it says 2020. And
could I interrupt real quick? Yeah. And I have a question for the city attorney. Are we going over anything besides the turf block and the glass handrails? Or I think Commissioner Vice Chair Pfaff is going to start getting into the landscape plan.
Oh, we do need to limit it to those two things.
Well, it is.
Is it related to that?
Yeah, okay. It is kind of related. So I know renderings are not necessarily accurate, but the rendering you've provided shows a different pattern for a different area for the fescue grass. It's like a smaller area. So am I to assume you're doing what was on the March 2020 plan? Do you know what I mean? It's your grass area is different than on the rendering. And I'm
sorry, I'm the second landscape architect on the project. I'm working on it from, after those approvals. So what I believe is if we could turn to the rendering, that's the first slide, is the best representation of that, which was the cover slide on this presentation.
So your grass is the turf and the grass, the pavers just stop at the edge of that first planter is what you're telling me, but I see on the landscape plan, it's actually different. That's all I wanted really to know.
Okay.
And, you have a tree also on the far left in your rendering, which is not on the landscape plan. I mean, it would be great if you could consider putting that in. I mean, it helps with context for me if we're going to talk about the turf. So that's what I wanted to ask.
Okay, thank you. Oh no, as the second landscape architect on the project, my intention is to try to develop the plan further in the spirit of the plan that was approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of the applicant? Commissioner Schmidt.
So with that, I'm not looking at either at the moment, but if I remember correctly, that the area of the block and the grass was to fulfill a landscape percentage area requirement that we had. So for what Vice Chair Pfaff is looking at as far as the approved plan, we would want to make sure that you're following that plan and providing the area that is required, because it's not just for you to make it look green. It was to fulfill a landscape requirement that was approved.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Say.
If I could just jump in just real quickly here. We have submitted our documents for the permit application in the second week of December, I believe. We submitted a set. And so it's our intent, and this will come out in the plan check process, I believe, but we have demonstrated that we've met the percentage of landscape coverage, not just in the front setback but overall for the entire property. And if there's something that isn't clear in that submittal, and how it conforms to what we have in the conditions of approval, we'll certainly provide any additional information that we need to. But as Dennis was suggesting, he came on board after the fact. We had a previous landscape architect that was involved in the planning submittal, and Dennis is now doing the permit document portion of this. And so it is fully our intent to meet what was required as a condition for the landscaping.
Thank you.
Thanks for providing that background, Andy.
You're welcome.
Okay, Commissioner Say.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to turn to the balcony railings. So, and unless I remember incorrectly, and sorry I didn't go back to reference, but when this project was originally reviewed, and I see you've titled these drawings "Proposed Balcony Privacy Materials." I thought the discussion was about how to provide privacy along the front, not just the sides, in the sense of things that might be stored on one's balcony, and protecting that from view from the street and from inside. I'm not sure if I got that wrong. I see that you are proposing clear balcony railings. There's no privacy to clear glass, so I'm just wondering where we're going with that.
Yeah, my understanding was that the concern for privacy was not so much with the street facing elevation and then the elevation facing toward the bay to the east, but it had to do with the proximity to the adjacent properties, which are much closer to our building than our buildings on the opposite side of the El Camino and then on the east facing elevation. I do understand that that in all projects, whenever we've done these multifamily projects, this always comes up as an issue about what happens with people's balcony, private balconies, and do they tend to store junk on these balconies, and that becomes an unsightly sort of thing. And perhaps I can let Jane, who represents the owner, talk a little bit about this, but one of the things that we can do to help control that is to have requirements in the CC&Rs that address how the balconies are going to be maintained. But this is a very modern, texturally and contextually a very modern building. Obviously, it uses modern materials, and so this is very much the look that we were after. We didn't want to obscure or provide obscured glass on the street facing side, because we wanted to be able to have some sort of depth and articulation to that front elevation, which is the best elevation of the building. But Jane, I don't know if you want to jump in and add to that or make any other comments.
Yeah, no, Andy, thank you. I think you touched on it. The CC&Rs is, in the HOA, the other HOA documents stating the rules of the HOAs, where things like this are typically addressed and the HOA manages it. At the end of the day, this is not a hundreds of unit building, right? This is a 21 unit building that's going to be a higher end property, where in our experience managing this size of properties, people are going to care about what it looks like from all different angles. And certainly the CC&Rs are going to have specifications of what people can store anywhere within site, whether it's a common area garage or anywhere, right? So certainly we will be addressing that in the documents.
I'm just wondering too, because this is it's not that many units, like you said, it's a lower height structure on a very public street. I'm not sure I forget what buildings are opposite this property, but with all of that glazing along the front, just wondering, even for a resident, if they would prefer to have a non-transparent balcony railing just for their own privacy from the interior, not only to hide the items that they might want to place on the balcony and the sightliness of that from the street, but from the residents' perspective too. Obscure glass is still also a very modern material, but I'm just wondering the comfort level of a resident living there on a relatively short building.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're going to have two sides of the building with obscure glass and two sides of the building with clear glass. So, between the potential 21 families that are going to be living in there, they'll have the ability to choose their preference.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Camarado?
Yeah, so I don't really have a problem with the glass. I think that it would be nice for the people on El Camino to have the frosted glass, because then people can't really see inside of their units, but I don't have a preference either way. The only thing I was thinking about were the grids. Some of the grids fall in line with the windows, and some of the grids are kind of offline. I don't know if there's a way so that the grids of the balcony, the iron grids, if they have to be, and maybe some of my fellow commissioners can answer that, the contractors, but if they have to be a certain width because of the glass. But if you look at the right side of the building on the top right-hand side, the grid on the balcony kind of goes into the middle of the window there. Whereas if you kind of look at the left-hand side of the building, the grid almost falls right in line with the grids of the windows or sliding doors there. So I was just wanting the architects to maybe take a quick look at that, but I don't have a problem with the clear glass.
Yeah, in response, well, first of all, I appreciate what you're saying. I know when we're designing projects like this and we're looking at things, and I tend to do this as an old school guy who still draws by hand, and for God's sake, nobody does that anymore. But as I'm putting pencil to paper, I tend to look at where sort of orthogonal lines and geometries match things in the background and the foreground. But in this situation, I think maybe there's a couple of ways to look at it. One is as you're describing, but the other one is that the plane of the balcony railing is a foreground plane, and then what you see is a grid line behind it sits a distance away. And when you start to see those two planes relative to each other from different angles, your view is always going to be dynamic. And I think for this building in particular, what you'll notice is the sort of the texture of the balcony railing plane, and then the texture of the building behind it, and the fact that they're maybe offset in some conditions and aligned in some conditions becomes less important than maybe just the simple rhythm of how each panel in that glazing system works. The other thing that I would say is that, and it probably doesn't come across entirely clearly in the images and the brochure information that we included in the submittal, but the idea of the framework that contains these glazing panels is they become sort of not an obtrusive sort of component to the railing, that the railing system actually is the glass panels as opposed to the framework. So we want that to sort of we want the grid, if you will, to sort of fall away into the background and have the glazing and the glass panels be the things that you notice.
Would you then not take that grid and maybe make it more of a clear?
We could certainly look at that.
Clear,
Yeah,
making-
because in the system, there's some options about what that grid compositionally, what that grid is going to be, and those are things that we can play with a little bit. And it's a good comment, I think, and something that we can certainly consider as we're refining that railing framework a little bit more. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it would be much nicer if it was more of a transparent piece that felt materially more akin to the panels than to the frame, right?
Correct.
So yeah, I like that idea.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schmidt.
Yeah, just for Sandy and everybody else, you would, even if they space those verticals exactly the same as the mullions, you'd only ever see it in pure elevation, which you're never ever going to see.
Right.
So no matter what you do, you're never going to see the grids overlap. But you bring up a good point that in the graphicness of it, in showing it in black, it helps us see it in the rendering, but maybe heading towards a stainless or an anodized color of the railing system then minimizes its framing color and would make it go away.
Yeah, both the comments that both of you make are excellent, I think, and I'm in tune with that idea as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, hand up again, or is that from before?
Yes, I do. I'm not sure if I'm just not reading the drawings correctly on the left and right elevations. The artist rendition seems to show taller glass panels just above the deck level of the balconies, but in the elevations, it looks like there is a partial solid surface material and then capped with a shorter glass panel railing. It's which one is it that you're proposing?
Abby, do you want to take that one?
Is it possible to pull the slide on so everybody can see Commissioner State's?
I think you're, like, if we look at the right elevation, for example.
Okay.
Yes. See how the artist rendition doesn't seem to be matching the elevation? I'm just wondering which one it's going to be.
It would be the one on top of the rendering where you see the right elevation, conditions of approval, FYI, above the rendering. That should be followed.
Okay, so there's a partial height, solid material wall surface capped with a shorter glass panel railing. Is that how it's being proposed?
Correct. We just have to just tweak the renderings to match the elevations.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see how it would look in actual renderings. I think what you were carrying forward is in the previous version, it was like a cable and cable rail kind of detail.
Correct.
That's now changed to glass.
Correct.
But I think it looks very different than what's being shown in that artist rendition.
It's close, but there's that tweak that you mentioned. So good observation there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, did that answer your question, Commissioner Say, about which way it's going?
Sounds like they're following the elevation.
Okay.
Which is different so then I guess if I should follow up then on the front elevation or in your front rendering, is it the same detail as your CAD drawn elevations, or is it going to be a full height glass panel like that as shown in your rendering of the front?
So the one on where the main entry is?
Yes.
That's full height.
That one's proposed to be full height. Okay, it's the
Correct.
sides that have the partial solid partial glass.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, are there any other questions of the applicant? All right, then
we do
let's
need to see if
are
there's
there any members of the public who would like to speak on this item?
Chair Gall, I'm not seeing any hands raised and there were no public comment emails submitted.
Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, any comments? I will make a comment. You know, I voted originally against this project, and my reason being that the turf blocks to me did not constitute the landscape requirement for the front of a project. I couldn't see where you could say that it's landscaping and you can also park there because it satisfied two things, and I couldn't see where it would do both of those things. It's like saying, well, we're putting in a lawn, but we're going to park our cars on it too, to me. So I still kind of stand there. I don't think it's going to stop this project, but that was my feeling before, and I still feel the same way. Commissioner Schmidt, I see your hand up.
Yeah, no, I was one that had some questions about the block and the grass and how that was going to function, because I just didn't see the detail. And they have provided the detail that I was looking for. So I'm satisfied with the FYI or with the changes.
Okay. Any other comments, or would someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the changes as provided.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Schmidt, second by Commissioner Haran. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Pfaff,
Aye.
Chair Gall.
Nay. So the motion passes 5-1-1. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $745, which includes noticing costs. All right, that closes out our regular action section of our meeting, and we will be moving on to design review study. Our first agenda item is 9A, 1205 Mills Avenue. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? I don't see any hands, so let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, this is an application for design review and special permits for first floor plate height and second floor balcony for a new 2-story single unit dwelling and detached garage at 1205 Mills Avenue, zoned R1. The subject property is an interior lot. The applicant's proposing to demolish all the structures on the site and build a new 2-story single unit dwelling with a new detached 1-car garage with an accessory dwelling unit attached. The proposed project would have a floor area of 3,310 square feet, where 3,310 square feet is the maximum allowed. The applicant is also requesting a special permit for a first floor plate height of 9 feet 10 inches, where 9 feet is the maximum allowed, as well as a special permit that's being requested for a 75 square foot second story balcony at the rear of the house. The house would have a total of 5 bedrooms in the main dwelling. The code says that when a garage is demolished in conjunction with the construction of an ADU, that those off-street parking spaces are not required to be replaced. Therefore, the proposed project has no covered parking spaces, but one uncovered space would be provided for in the driveway. The accessory dwelling unit has been determined to be in compliance with the city's ADU regulations, and review of ADU applications are administrative only and are not part of review by the Planning Commission this evening. The applicant is requesting the following applications: design review, special permit for first floor plate height, and special permit for a second floor balcony. The required findings for design review and special permits have been provided in the staff report for your reference this evening, and that concludes my presentation. But I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Catherine. Are there any questions of staff? I don't see any hands, so I'm going to open the public hearing with the applicant. Please come forward, state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project.
Okay, can everybody see and hear me?
Yep.
All right, good evening all. Thank you again for meeting with us tonight. I think the synopsis of the project was pretty accurate as far as what we were going to be talking about. The main items being the floor height of the first floor and the second story balcony, which we have been working with Zia on that to make sure that it does comply with the codes, the codes as far as planning goes. I don't know that there's anything else really that I can add to the project right now, other than those items that we've that have already been discussed. I just point out that there is another project that we did is on the same street actually at 1305 Mills. 1304. Sorry, 1304 Mills, which is very similar. The only difference is that this project has an ADU with the attached one-car garage.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Pfaff.
Well, right off the bat, I just wonder, what is your special, do you feel your special need for the extended floor height?
It's a brand new construction. The other project at 1304 Mills is also having the same floor height of 9 foot 10 inches. So we are kind of consistent with the neighborhood. And I think a lot of homes in that area have similar kind of height, the 2-story homes. So we are also trying to be consistent with the neighborhood and the other brand new project at 1304 Mills.
Do you know when 1304 Mills was built or planned? Do you remember?
Yes, no, it was just, the construction was just finished 4 months back. And yeah, the planning approval, I think, happened in 2021.
Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Say.
Yes, I was noticing that some of the windows don't seem to be matching up to your floor plans. On the plans, you show sliding windows in some areas of the house, and on the elevations, they don't seem to match up as per the plan. So I'm wondering which is which.
Sorry, let me just get this here.
For example, the front, I don't know, it's the living room or
Yeah, I think if you look at sheet A 2.0, we actually call it the sizes and the type of window.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
if you look at your A 2.0 in comparison to A 5.1, the front elevation, the living room windows are shown as sliding windows, but in the elevations it's showing as a 3-part window. And the same thing in the bedroom adjacent to the living room.
Yeah, I think,
And upstairs as well. So none of them align.
right, I think they're supposed to be casement to the best of my knowledge. John, what you
Yes.
think?
Yeah, they're a 3-panel casement, so that's just an error on noting the type of window there.
Yeah.
So we can make that change.
So your intention is to have the windows be casement windows, like a fixed center window with flankers on each side? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. And on the sides, are you able to meet egress on the bedrooms? Yeah, I think the left side. It looks like you should be able to do that. Okay. And let's see, what's my other question here? I am at the patio at the back of the house. It's, I think, the dining room. Is that supposed to be, it says on the plan, a sliding door. And I think on the elevation, it's a window. So is it an intention to be a sliding door or window or casements or whatever?
It is a sliding door. That's correct.
No. I think on the dining room, it's not a sliding door. It's supposed to be a window actually. On the
Oh, I'm
dining
sorry.
room.
Are you referring to the large?
No,
Oh,
the large,
no.
not the great room. The great room I can see is a bifold door or OXXO doors, I suppose.
Oh, no, yeah.
Are you trying to shop for doors? Sorry, Alexa's talking to me here. Yeah.
No,
if
it's
you
a
look at
window.
your- It's
It
supposed
is.
to be a window, not a
It's
sliding
supposed to
door.
be a window. Correct.
Okay.
We will fix the window. I'm seeing it's actually on the front. There is they should have been casement, and I think by mistake we mentioned slider there, and then even the dining room window is a window, not a door.
Okay, yeah, and also upstairs in bedrooms number 2 and 3, those are also inconsistent.
Is it? I see. Okay, yeah, we'll make sure that we fix them.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Schmidt, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. Can you tell me what the fascia board size is for the roof framing? Is that a 1x6?
It is a 1x6, yes.
Okay. And the notes on the exterior keynotes, keynote 5 is saying 1x8 wood lap siding. Got it. But then it's the same keynote around the other 3 elevations, which are showing stipple and not showing the siding lines. Was it your intention to do stucco on the 3 sides, or your intention to do shiplap siding on 4 sides?
So just the shiplap at the front elevation. The other 3 sides, the 2 sides and the rear we're proposing would be stucco.
Okay.
Yep.
And okay. That's it for me.
I had a couple of questions. Commissioner Schmidt just had a couple of them answered for me, but on your note 9 on the front elevation on sheet A5.1, you show that as a faux wood rafter tail at the peak. However, it's down about a foot from the peak. Is that intended to be down that far, or is that supposed to be up? You know what I mean, at the peak of the gable end?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. No, it's supposed to be up right at the peak.
Okay, and and then you have the same thing on the side elevation on A 5.2 on the rear exterior elevation. I'm sorry, you have 09, but there's no faux rafter tail there. Is it, you intend to put one there?
Yes.
In other words, is it only putting the faux rafter tails at the front of the house, or are you going to carry them around the rest of the house?
Well, the intent was to focus the rafter tail or the exposed rafter tails at the front of the house. However, there is two situations where we could have faux rafter tail, which is that
on the rear elevation.
Yeah.
Okay. And actually, my biggest question, because I built a house around the corner on Paloma a number of years back, I was in a flood zone. Have you checked the FEMA maps for this?
Yes.
Because
Yes,
you're not in the flood zone.
There is a
No, we are, and
14 feet.
You are in the flood zone.
Correct.
Then doesn't your first floor framing need to be 3 feet above grade?
We have right now. We have a proposed a 1 foot, 1.24 feet above the base flood elevation.
Above what? Above the basement elevation? Yeah, I get that, but I think because this is going to change your whole design. If what we had to do when we built the house on Paloma was we needed to be 3 feet above grade, so that's going to change the whole design of the house. And there is a note on here: a copy of a submitted FEMA LOMA is required to Public Works Engineering prior to building permit final. But I think you might want to pursue that because that's going to change everything. And you can't have anything that could be damaged, wood or ductwork or anything below that number. So I think that and then it's going to, of course, affect the ADU in the back because that's at a low level too. So point is, it's going to change the entire design of the house.
No, we did, John, help me understand. We did keep the house some few feet above the grade level.
There's a specific number from FEMA. So anyway, it's just a question. So we'll get into the comments later, but
right.
Okay, does anyone else have questions for the applicant? All right, then I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm sorry. Do we have any members of the public who'd like to speak on this item? Or were any comments received through email?
Yes, there was one public comment received. I would like to read it into record. Hello, I'd like to comment on the January 9th, 2023 Planning Commission Agenda Item 9A for 1205 Mills Avenue. I'm expressing concern with the concrete patio on the right of the ADU will adversely affect the root system of the adjacent 42-inch redwood tree on our property at 1209 Mills Avenue and potentially harm its structural integrity. This large redwood tree is approximately 2 feet from the property line and over 50 feet in height. The base of the tree extends above ground beyond the fence onto the neighboring 1205 Mills property. It looks like from the plans, this concrete patio runs right up against the fence and onto the top of the base of the redwood tree. Redwood trees have very shallow roots systems that extend 50 feet in every direction and are mostly located within the top 3 feet of soil. I'm wondering if a more porous surface, such as pavers, might be better than a concrete patio in this area, allowing water to get to the root system of the redwood tree. In addition, I would like to confirm that no part of the base of this tree will be harmed during construction and that any installed patio will not compromise the integrity of this wonderful tree, its base, or its root system. Thanks, J. Larlarb at 1209 Mills Avenue.
Thank you. Are there any other emails or would any member of the public like to speak on this item?
Chair Gahn, no other public comment emails were submitted.
Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, any comments? Chair Pfaff, Vice Chair Pfaff, sorry.
So I'll start with, I'll work backwards here. I noticed that tree, it's gorgeous. The neighbor, I was trying to figure out which property that was on, and would like to reiterate that's they need to really be careful and consider different surface material there so that that tree is not harmed in any way and needs to be protected. I do think the city does specify what is to be done, but that I think that definitely needs to occur in these plans. But about this plan in particular, I personally think there's a lot going on. I wouldn't be able to be comfortable with the height. Maybe it was the height extensions on the lower floors were something that was done for a while, and it was actually changed because the houses became quite massive looking, taken all together. And so that's the reason the rule changed. That's why you need a special permit in this case. I can't see a need. I see a need to raise the whole house, as Chair Gall mentioned, the level just because of the flood zone, but not what this is proposing. It's different. I also think it does not behoove the design to have different side front material as opposed to the sides, because you want, it's a real house. You want to have 3 dimensions, and I just find the design is not holding together as well as it could. So I think it would behoove this plan to actually go to a design reviewer. Personally, that would be what I'm seeing here. That's what I'd like to express.
Thank you. Commissioner Schmidt.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of drafting issues to be resolved. Most of the windows don't match their plan. So that all needs to be coordinated. I agree with the floodplain issue. That's really going to be a driver and change this design. I would not support the 9'10" plate height variance for this house. And in fact, I think when you come back, you really need to take a look at how you measure all these vertical heights on these elevations, because none of them add up. So I certainly don't support the idea of stucco on 3 sides and siding on the front. So really, there's not a lot that I can support. And even in the renderings, the trim and the overhang and the scale of this just doesn't hold together. So I'm actually in agreement with Vice Chair Pfaff that this could be a good candidate for design review.
Thank you. Commissioner Camerado.
Yeah, I would like to also mention that I'd like the applicant to, if we're going to send this to design review consultant, that they start looking at the exterior lighting. We've got some lights on this that are going up into the air. And I think as per our last meeting, we're starting to look at the lights and how they impact the neighborhoods. So if we could kind of look at the lights, and I also agree that this should be moved forward to a design review consultant.
Thank you. Commissioner Say.
Yes, I just wanted to chime in as well, along with my fellow commissioners, that I think this would be a great candidate for a design review consultants review and assistance. And I also I think it's going to change, just like some of the commissioners have already said, with after you address the floodplain requirements, that even without that, I would not support the 9'10" plate height on the first floor. Unlike what the applicant said, that the house fits in with the neighborhood, I disagree with that, and feel that the neighborhood is mostly a lower, 8'3", maybe kind of plate height, and even at the 9-foot plate height would already be pushing it. So certainly beyond 9 foot would not be acceptable in this neighborhood.
Thank you. Commissioner Haran.
Thanks. Just had another, some specific feedback. The front porch bothers me that it's only 3 feet wide. It's really, really narrow, so it's not really a front porch. It's kind of faux, which is a kind of personal pet peeve of mine. The left elevation is completely flat, has no architectural interest whatsoever, and it's kind of open along the driveway, so it's going to just be a very long flat wall that I don't think is going to be very aesthetically pleasing. The roof is very boring, just a straight roof from front to back. So the house is doesn't have a lot of architectural interest from my perspective, and add to that the stucco on 3 sides. It's hard to review anything else because I think you've raised a very important comment regarding the the 3 foot above FEMA flood is going to change a lot, especially in the back. The ADU is essentially shown to be even with the grade. So if that has to come up 3 feet, a whole lot's going to change. So I think I'd be interested to see what it looks like once that aspect is addressed. Thanks.
Thank you. I won't belabor the comments. I agree with everything that's been said and would reinforce all of them. And I would recommend the applicant do themselves a favor and find out what that elevation is for the FEMA flood level. It's the 100-year floodplain level. Okay, so let's see. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion to move this, have the applicant see a design review consultant.
I'd like to second that motion.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Camerado and a second by Vice Chair Pfaff. Any discussion on the motion? No, then can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Commissioner Stay,
Aye.
Vice Chair Pfaff,
Aye.
and Chair Gall.
Aye. Motion passes 6-0-1, and this is not appealable. This will move us on to design review study item 9B 2812 Rivera. If you are the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? No, and we have no recusals. Okay, then let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, this is an application for design review and a hillside area construction permit for a 2nd-story addition to an existing single unit dwelling at 2812 Rivera Drive, zoned R1. The subject property is an interior lot and currently contains a single-story, single-unit dwelling with an attached garage. The applicant is proposing a 2nd-story addition, and the total floor area would increase to 3,654 square feet, which is the maximum allowed on this parcel. The subject property is located within the hillside area overlay zone, and the code states that in this hillside area, that development shall be designed to preserve distant views, with preservation being limited to obstruction of distant views, specifically of San Francisco Bay, San Francisco Airport, Mills Canyon, and this is from primary indoor living spaces. The existing house contains 3 bedrooms, and with this project would increase to 5 bedrooms, which requires 3 parking spaces, 2 of which must be covered, and those will be provided in the existing attached garage. 1 uncovered space will be provided for in the driveway. The applicant's requesting approval for design review and hillside area construction permit. And I've provided for you for reference in the staff report, the design review criteria, as well as the required findings for the hillside area construction permit. So that concludes my staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Catherine. Are there any questions of staff? Vice Chair Pfaff.
Catherine, is it, I'm understanding correctly that the I think it's a eucalyptus in the front is going to stay. It's a real pretty one.
Oh, in front of the garage?
On the left-hand side, I think it, yeah.
I believe it is, yes. I'll defer to the project architect, but we had talked about trees and I don't recall that anything's being removed.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yeah, Catherine, I just wanted to clarify, under the FAR.
Yeah.
It says under proposed that it's gonna be 45-40. It looks like that was just a mistake.
Yeah,
So-
that's a mistake. The
Right.
proposed FAR is 3654, which is the maximum allowed.
Right.
That's it's just an error.
Right, so as we approve this, we'll just want to make sure that we're noting that and that they're not. No poor assumptions are made. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you. There were no further questions of staff. I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward, state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project?
For 2012. So appreciate the consideration tonight. So we've lived in Burlingame for 8 years, hopefully quite a few more years. Just would like to get a little bit more space. We both work from home, have teenage daughters and family coming from out of town, all of our family from the Midwest visiting quite a bit. So just like a little bit more space to our home. So and just to overall upgrade the house too. So a lot of improvements. In addition to just the 2 bedrooms.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the applicant? I have one question. This kind of bounces back to that last project that we looked at. So I realized that the existing house has stucco on a couple of the sides and siding on the front. Would you consider maybe making, because it's more visible, the upper floor have the wood siding?
Yeah, actually the rendering is correct on the right side that it shows the siding, and I need to edit that to put it on the right side. And since we're talking about it, it should probably come around to the left. And if we could leave you can see on the rendering that the upper floor has siding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'd like to include that on the drafted plans that we submitted to be on the right and possibly on the left, and then the stucco on the back.
Okay. And have you spoken with the neighbors?
Yeah.
Laura and Ben, you can answer that.
Yeah, we've spoken to the neighbors on both sides and across the street. So just the neighbors that are kind of touching us on either side.
Okay. Anybody for the street as it starts to go uphill a little ways?
Not that much.
Did you get that?
Yeah, the neighbors
starting to freeze up again, I think.
Yeah, I think you broke up a little bit, but you were asking the neighbors up the hill. So we have asked the neighbors just directly up the hill from us, so directly touching our property.
Okay. All right, thank you. Commissioner Say?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear very clearly. Did you say that you did talk to your uphill neighbor about any potential view blockage and there was none?
They didn't seem to raise any concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have questions of the applicant? Vice Chair Fox.
Yeah, just to make sure that we're talking about the same tree. You're going to keep that beautiful tree in your, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
That lights all over it. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Good
We
job.
have a tree house in there right now for the
Oh,
kids.
very nice. Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, or do we receive any comments through email?
We have received 3 public comments that I will read into record unless there's any folks that are here to speak. I don't see anyone raising their hand, so I'll just proceed.
Okay.
This is from Alex. It says, I am concerned with the design review of the project at 2812 Rivera Drive, specifically the proposed 2nd story addition. In the lower part of Rivera Drive, all houses are single story to ensure that no views of neighboring houses are obstructed. Adding a second story to the project site would deviate from the established pattern and potentially obstruct the views of neighboring homes. And that's from Alex Yu. I'll move on to the next public comment. Hi, first of all, apologies for sending this to multiple email addresses. I was not certain which one is appropriate. I am the owner of 2833 Rivera Drive. I'm writing to express my objection to the proposed second story addition to 2812 Rivera Drive. I am concerned that the second story addition will obstruct our house's views of the beautiful bayfront, the airport runways, the East Bay Hills, and skyline, as well as Mount Diablo. As you would appreciate, this will certainly cause some amount of mental and financial distress to my family. It is my understanding that the city of Burlingame has processed and policies in place that protect the rights of homeowners. Please advise. As I am traveling overseas at this moment, please feel free to reach out to me via this email or contact my in-law who is copied on this email. Look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much. Hanji Huang. I have one more to read. We are the owners and occupants of 2829 Rivera Drive. Oppose the proposal to add a second floor to 2812 Rivera Drive. Our primary concerns are the impacts to the existing views from number 1, our family room bay window, number 2, our breakfast room table window, number 3, our front enclosed patio table. Our existing views are as follows. Number 1, the San Francisco Bay shoreline. Number 2, the San Francisco Airport runways and the descent path. Number 3, the distant San Francisco Bay waters. Number 4, the East Bay Hills. And number 5, Mount Diablo and skyline. This is from Terry and Doneen Roberts. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And we do not have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item. All right, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments? Commissioner Camarado.
So I think the first thing that we really need to look at is, yes, the design, but story poles. And I think we've kind of come across this several times. Do we put the story poles up first, or do we have them, do we approve the project first? So I'm just going to leave it to my fellow commissioners and see what you guys think. But I think we have to put story poles up.
Okay, Commissioner Haran.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I like the design. I think it looks good from an elevation from the street. But yeah, story poles are the only way to confirm whether anybody's views are truly blocked or whether it's just a perception.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Schmidt.
Yeah, story poles. And I think the sooner they go up, the better. I think we've found in some of these projects where we've asked for the story poles and we've actually said, okay, bring it back on action and then put up the story poles. Then that leaves us without a lot of wiggle room on how to correct something that's going to change. So I'm thinking that we need to get the story poles up before we go really any further for them. I do like the design. I like the rendering and wished I would have actually seen it beforehand. Again, these renderings really help us, but they don't help us when I only get 10 seconds while it's being on the screen. So I would love to see that get into the set for the future so that we can evaluate the materials and everything. But I think we need to move forward.
It's in this.
Okay. As an FYI, I did get the rendering as the last sheet of my set. So maybe you need to pay your parking tickets or something, John. I don't know. I agree. I like the design. I think it's really good.
There it is. Thank you.
I like the design, but I do need to see the story poles. I think it could move forward if we didn't need the story poles. So that being said, would anyone like to make a motion? Because I believe we can bring this back to regular action after the story poles are up, given that the design is approvable in our viewpoint.
Sounds like you just made,
So,
Yeah.
you just
okay,
did.
that's my motion to bring this to regular action after the story poles are erected and certified.
I'll second
Second
that.
So I have a motion by Chair Gall, a second by Vice Chair Fox. Any discussion on the motion? No, then can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Camerata.
Aye.
Oh, I think Commissioner Schmidt had his hand up. No. Okay, sorry. Sorry. Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Pfaff,
Aye.
and Chair Gall.
Aye. So the motion passes 6-0-1, and this is not appealable. So let's move on to what is this? 9C, 2888 Adeline Drive. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? I don't see any hands, and there are no Vice Chair Fox.
Well, I was afraid to drive down that driveway. So I must confess, I drove by, I looked, but I didn't see much of the house, in all honesty. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you. And I see no other hands, so there are no recusals that I know of. So let the record note that all commissioners have visited the project site or driven by. Can we have a second?
Sure. The application is for design review and hillside area construction permit for a first and second story addition to an existing single unit dwelling at 2888 Adeline Drive, zoned R1. The subject property is an interior flag lot that slopes downward approximately 72 feet from the front to the rear of the lot, and that does not include the driveway. So from the street on Adeline, it slopes down it's even a greater slope, which explains why no one wants to drive down the driveway. The property contains an existing single unit dwelling with an attached garage. Due to the slope on the lot, the house is one level at the front, or the portion that faces Adeline Drive, and 3 levels at the rear. This application includes proposed additions to both the lower and main floors of the house. The proposed project would have a total floor area of 5,089 square feet, where 8,488 square feet is the maximum allowed based on this size lot. Subject property is located within the hillside overlay zone. The code states that hillside development shall be designed to preserve existing distant views, and those views are to the San Francisco Bay, San Francisco Airport, and Mills Canyon from primary indoor living areas. The existing house contains 5 bedrooms, and with this project would increase to 7 bedrooms. The family room qualifies as a bedroom. 3 parking spaces, 2 of which must be covered, are required on site. 1 covered space is provided in the attached garage, and 1 uncovered space is provided in the driveway. So because the existing attached garage has an interior clear width of 16 feet 9 inches, it doesn't quite meet the criteria for a 2-car garage, so it's considered a 1-car garage. Therefore, it's considered to be non-conforming. However, in this case, because there's no change in the parking requirement based on the number of bedrooms, from 5 to 7, a parking variance is not required in this case. All other zoning code requirements have been met, and that concludes a summary of the staff report.
Thank you, Ruben. Are there any questions of staff? No, I don't see any hands. Then I'm going to open the public hearing. The applicant, please come forward, state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project.
Sorry for the delay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I don't want to take up too much of your time. The project is probably pretty modest next to the ones that we've reviewed tonight. All the added space is essentially below existing massing, so no real change from anyone's point of view. Definitely no view impact on anyone, and there's no changes whatsoever from the public right-of-way view. Just a little bit more space for their growing family. No impact on trees either. And it is adjacent to a wonderful path, but again, the addition is staying quite far from it.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Schmidt.
Yeah, the new bedroom on the right side of the house, sorry. That is what, under the garage?
That's correct. It's a particularly vertical lot, as was mentioned by one of the commissioner. Almost difficult to approach, and as a result, accordingly, there's a lot of crawl space left available by initial builders, and we're reclaiming some of that crawl space to capture more interior space.
Oh no, totally get it. I got family who lives across the street, so they have that crawl space too. But so bedroom number 6 is getting some new windows looking out to the right, which to me looks at the neighbor's deck. And as much as I did try to kind of climb around down there, I couldn't quite see vertically if it's actually just going to suddenly look on their deck, and whether or not there's any trees that are going to help provide a visual break so that you're not suddenly putting a window into their deck.
So thank you for your question. It's a good one. We're below the existing neighbor, and there's also a fence. And so those windows are really meant to provide natural light.
Totally get it. And what might be helpful is when you come back, a picture or a drawing that's kind of just showing how the section works there that you're below. It's just hard to tell from Google Earth and looking from above.
Understood.
Maybe on your A42 rear elevations, off to the left, you could just say, hey, the deck is, above this. Then that'll go away for me.
This is noted.
Great.
Jing, I see your hand up. Did you want to answer that question?
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm the owner, so I can provide a little bit of additional color to that question. Appreciate that. So we also have hedges along the fences, so we can't really see from our neighbors from that because of the hedges we planted over there.
Perfect. Like I said, just couldn't see it from my perspective.
No, it's a very good question. I appreciate that.
And seeing how nobody has come up to say anything, I didn't want the neighbor to then say later that, hey, this was looking onto my deck.
No, yes, I totally. And we also specifically inform our neighbor Evie and Felton that they're aware of this.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Camarado.
Yeah, so my question is to the architect, would you guys be able on this next go round, be able to provide an artist rendition of what you're adding on so I can really see more of the details of the finishes and the materials that are going to be used?
We certainly could, and we love to produce renderings and beautiful photos, but the thing is, we're not really intending, and it's not part of the project requirements, to change any of the views from the public right of way. We're really changing absolutely nothing.
Okay.
And the changes, again, from the street, however far it is the street because of the long driveway and down sloping and that. I mean, nothing will change, and we could produce cinematic videos and renderings, but I just don't think it's relevant to the discussion because nothing. We're keeping within the parameters of the existing structure. We're instructing to just add a little bit of space under what it currently exists.
Understood. I'll see what my fellow commissioners would say to that. Okay, but thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Pfaff.
Yes, I'm trying to understand on page A4.1, which is your proposal. And I guess I'm looking at the rear elevation. You have on the, well, adjacent to the porch, you have 3 windows, and then you have what look like sort of original, well, what do you call those?
Sliding windows?
They're story windows. I don't know. They're like going up into the roof, the triangular windows that are kind of below your. So
Okay.
Yeah, so I see that. And then I'm looking at the pattern. I mean, that the ones that are sort of geometric, they look the same, but then when I look on your what you're saying is the existing rear elevation, the door pattern, the doors look different, and they both say E. Does that mean existing? I thought that meant nothing's being changed, or is the E standing for something else? Because they're different. They're definitely like different.
No, you're right. Part of our project requirements, and mind you, this is facing the rear, and we're not increasing the views, or I guess impeding on anyone's privacy or views, but the part of the project requirement is to increase the interaction within the indoor space and the outdoor space to look at the beautiful views out there. And so the fenestration is increasing, the door width is increasing a little bit, and we also added some transoms, yeah.
Well, I think, but the transoms I think were there. I think what I'm seeing is the windows below and below the porch are getting longer. I see that, but I'm kind of talking about the pattern on the porch that you have 3 windows and they're much larger. And on your existing, you have 4, and they follow in line with your transom, which is really quite attractive. And I realize this faces the back, et cetera, et cetera. I'm looking at the design, and I don't think that's quite as, me personally, I don't think it's as attractive, but I just wanted to know, is that a mistake, or really you meant them to be different than what is already there?
Again, thank you for your question. So we don't mean to change anything too radical. So the transom pattern was kept, but just to reflect the modern ways of living, the doors, the French doors with the you may notice the post separation in the middle were just replaced by 3 sliding doors so that there's a better connection with the balcony. That's really the only change.
I just want to make sure I was understanding that the E then shouldn't be there because it's new. So that's all. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, I just had one question. So I want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. So deck 2 on the main level does not have a roof over any part of that. Is that correct? Where the addition is going to be, where what will become office study and deck 2.
That's correct. If we're looking at grid 4, so most of what is expanded happens below that deck.
That deck or at the same level as that deck, because
not quite as far.
Yeah, but the office and study is on the main level where there is currently a deck.
Oh, I'm sorry, you were looking at the office. Yes, on the office quadrant is a deck. There's just a lot of decks. It's a very vertical property. And the office is internalized to provide like in a home office for the homeowners.
Yeah,
and that's one of the change. And then on the floor below, there's the three smallish bedrooms are expanded onto like the main deck.
Okay, yeah, no, I got you. Okay, thank you. If we have any members of the public who'd like to speak on this item, or were any comments received through email?
Looks like we have one hand raised by Mary. And while we're bringing her in, I will note that we did not receive any public comment emails.
Okay, thank you. Mary, you're good to go anytime.
Hi, I think it's probably okay. I'm an uphill neighbor. I'm at 2900, so I was just curious about whether this might impact the view, because we have a beautiful view down into Mills Canyon. So from the quick look I got at the pictures you showed, the drawings, and from what you've described, you don't expect that the height is going, that it's going any higher, that really the addition is on that sort of downhill side. So I shouldn't expect, at this point, I cannot see your roof or your house, and that should not change. Is that true?
I can certainly answer this question if it is my place to do so. No, so there's no increase in height, and we really don't expect your views or anyone's views to be changed. Most of the proposed addition is happening under existing massing.
Okay,
But thank you.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Jing, I see your hand up.
Mary, apologize, didn't check with you beforehand, but yes, we did make sure that it will not block anybody's neighbor views, but sorry, but now checking with you first.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public who'd like to speak on this item? No, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioner, any comments? Well, I'll start off. You know, the line of questioning I had for the applicant was, there's a deck there, and now there's going to be a room. So where a deck would be transparent, and a room obviously is going to have some kind of blockage. I know it's kind of a weird spot, but I think that it's simple enough to do some kind of story poll. The neighbor has expressed a concern about the view. So I'm thinking we probably should get some story polls at least on that deck on the main floor area where the office and study are going to be put in. But other than that, I don't have any objections to the addition. I think it looks nice. It's really not visible from anywhere except from the back. So you got to go down Mills Canyon to really see it. Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes, so I kind of was looking back and forth on the pages since Commissioner Camarado had mentioned, and really that rear elevation doesn't show a whole lot of materials to it, and because it's rather small, makes it really hard to see the kind of the character of what's being built out. And I realized that most of this is underneath and it's not creating a whole lot of new building, but really that rear elevation is getting a whole new wall, a bunch of new windows, and that office build out. And so I think we need a little bit more information on the materials and the trims and what you're doing back there and how that's going to either match the existing or whatever. But, you know, because that house is hard to see, none of us really got to go back there and see where all this addition is going to happen. And it's true that people in Mills Canyon are going to see it, just not the rest of us from the street. So I think that would be helpful for the next time around, but otherwise I don't see it being impactful to others because of where the build out's going to be. Thanks.
I see no other hands, and no other comments.
Chair Gall, the
Yeah.
the architect does have his hand up. I don't know if he
Oh.
wants to offer any clarifications, but it's up to you whether you'd like to let him back in
Sure,
and
I'll let him back in.
open up the public hearing.
Well, I'll reopen the public hearing. Okay, Vin, you want to go ahead?
Yep. Sorry for the delay once again. Just maybe in the interest of simplifying your busy calendar, I thought I might offer clarification. As one of the commissioner pointed out, there's a deck that's being internalized, but it's in the very corner of the house that that has higher roof lines all around it, and it's about 12 feet by 10 feet. So it's a very, very small corner. So I just don't know that any even story post would be visible by anyone.
Yeah, I agree, but I'd rather err on the side of caution. I mean, I'd like to get some feedback from the other commissioners on that too. I don't think it's going to be impacted. Any of the neighbors are going to be impacted, but I just, like I say, I don't want to have somebody come back and say, hey.
I completely understand. It's for the commission to decide, and for the just to clarify again, the intent for the rear, just for architectural integrity, we just mean to preserve what exists and carry it all around. So if I apologize if it lacked details, but we think the house should look consistent all around with if we were proposing a more ambitious remodel or restyling, we might have suggested otherwise, but we just want to carry the same look, just so since it's so minimal.
Thank you. Jing, I see your hand is up again.
Yes, I would appreciate the commissioner's concern about the impact of the view of the neighborhood, but realistically, nobody in the back can really see it because it's very sloped, and people in the Mills Canyon, they can't really see anything because it's really sloped, and where they actually take a hike is just very,
Yeah,
very far away.
the concern would be for one of the neighbors living in.
We did check with the neighbor who can see it as well.
Okay,
We did check with neighbor.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, commissioners.
Thank you.
Any other further comments? No. Would someone like to make a motion? Commissioner Camerado.
So I understand what the applicant is trying to say, but I'm having a little bit of a difficulty just understanding the plans, and I don't know if it's just my ignorance and that I can't see the details, or if the images are just too small for me to see, which is why I asked for some renderings. I'm looking for my fellow commissioners to kind of weigh in on this, but I really would like some sort of imaging to see these pictures, these plans a little bit better. And maybe they just kind of need to put them on separate pages so I can see it a little bit better. I'm just having a hard time with it. That's all. And so I'd like to see it in more detail, bigger. Maybe that's the idea.
I think that if, we're getting elevations of the entire house where only a small portion of the house is being worked on. So maybe if the elevations were increased in scale by not having the entire back of the house, but only the areas or, and the adjacent area of where it's going to be remodeled.
Maybe that's why I'm just getting confused.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Too much
I think the point's well taken that some of the exterior materials should be indicated at the very least. Does anyone else, I'm not pushing for story poles necessarily, but again, it's just a box. So I think it would be relatively simple to do, but and I get it, it's in the canyon. I walk the canyon enough. This is actually my neighborhood. So I just don't want to be I mean, I'm not gonna push it unless if you guys don't think we need it, but Commissioner Schmidt, I see your hands up.
Yeah, just looking at it three-dimensionally, I'm not sure I see where the neighbor's view is going to be impacted. But I would hope that maybe the applicant and the neighbor work something out so that then when they come back, the neighbor can say, yes, I'm satisfied, because I don't see anybody else. But I do see that that particular neighbor does look over the top, but really shouldn't, you know, because we're not increasing height, it shouldn't change their view.
Right.
Other than a couple trees right in front of them. But I don't think that that's going to be impactful.
Okay.
So it kind of up to them maybe to work that, because I'd hate to slow this down for story polls and the expense for such a I think a very minor portion there. But I do agree with Commissioner Camarado that maybe larger elevations with a little bit more drawing to them would help us see. I mean, it's a very complicated little structure with a lot of angles and stuff going on, and these elevations are flat little diagrams right now, which are not helping us see the character that's going to happen back here. And part of our job is to try and preserve the character of these homes and try to help them be better as we go forward. So I think a little bit more opportunity to see what we want to see would be helpful.
Okay.
I don't think it should stop him. I just think I think for our next review, if he provides us a little bit more to see, we'll be fine.
And would that next review be in the action calendar?
I feel good about making a motion to the action calendar.
Okay.
So I make a motion that we bring this back on action, and that the applicant provides a little bit more visualization of that rear elevation along with materials, so that we can then give them a positive response.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Schmidt and a second by Commissioner Camarado. Unless there's any discussion on the motion, I'd like to have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Pfaff,
Aye.
Chair Gall.
Aye. So the motion passes 6-0-1, and this is not appealable. All right, we are on to our final design review study item 9D, 523 Francisco Drive. If you are the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we also ask that you turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communication? I saw that, Scott. Do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? No, and there are no recusals on this item. So let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. And can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, this is an application for design review for first and second story addition to an existing single unit dwelling at 523 Francisco Drive, zoned R1. The subject property is an interior lot with an existing two-story single unit dwelling with an attached garage. The project proposes a first and second floor addition to the main house, increasing the floor area from 2,449 square feet to 2,858 square feet, where 3,100 square feet is the maximum allowed. There are 4 bedrooms that are existing, and there will be no change to the number of bedrooms with this proposed addition. 2 parking spaces are required, one of which must be covered. And there is an existing covered parking space located in the attached garage. It is non-conforming. However, because there's no change to the garage or to the overall parking requirement, that will can remain as is, and there's no parking variance required. So this application is just for design review, and staff has provided for you in your staff report for reference the design review criteria and findings required. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Are there any questions of staff? I don't see any hands. Then I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about the project? Anytime you're ready, Jesse.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. I want to wish everyone a happy new year, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present this project to you guys. As you probably have seen, it's a pretty straightforward rear addition, first story, second story, expanding the lower level, bedroom down below, and expanding the upper level to a master for Mr. and Mrs. Sharma. The rear elevation was designed to pretty much kind of match the existing front elevation of the residence. There's no work being done on the front, just all on the rear. I think basically that's it. I mean, yeah, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Vice Chair Fox.
Hi, Jesse. This is it's real pretty original house. It's beautiful.
It is a cute house.
Real cute. So my question is about I'm trying to figure out if I'm understanding what you've done with the windows.
Okay.
So yeah. So looking at the upper story. So it's just a Juliet. It's just a Juliet balcony, right? It's just, it has no dimension. Okay. So are these, they are 3 separate windows, but they are, or they look like windows, but they're doors. What are they actually?
Oh, those are doors. Yeah, those are doors.
They're all doors. So are they all functioning doors?
Yeah, they'll collapsible doors. If you see the floor plan on sheet A2. And they're kind of like bifold doors that collapse into each other.
Oh, left to right.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never seen those before with grids, but I guess they exist. So, oh, interesting. And they go then all the way to the even though your balcony is not a real balcony, they go to the ground. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they're doors, and basically you push them over, they'll collapse into one panel. The 2 will collapse into the 1, and then it's just like, it's almost like a sliding glass door, but it's just
I see. Yeah. Oh, okay. And then below on your lower floor, those are they're just double hung windows, or
those will be casements, and yeah, they're windows.
Right. Oh, casements. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Pretty sure those are casements.
I don't see any hands. Okay, do we have any members of the public who'd like to speak on this item, or were there any emails? No.
We do have one hand raised by Paulina.
Okay.
And while we're bringing Paulina in, there were no public comment emails submitted.
Okay.
Hi, this is actually Ben and Paulina, husband and wife. We're neighbors at the 519 Francisco house. So we actually, for the first time, saw the plans today. And the new addition, the second floor, is facing our deck in the back. And we also have a pool in back. So it does appear that the second floor will be staring right into the deck in the back in our full backyard. So I don't think we really see any other issues, and certainly nothing with the first floor, but kind of wanted to mention that about the second floor.
Okay. Thank you. All right, and we had no We have no emails. And then I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, do you have any comments? I'm wondering about the neighbor's concern, especially with those such tall windows. And I didn't really look before, but I'm looking for a landscape plan. Maybe we could. Oh, Commissioner Schmidt, go ahead.
I'm looking at Google Earth and there's not really big trees right there in that section of fencing. And I think that's given the big windows out the back, and these are large windows actually all the way around.
Yeah,
I think it's a fair ask that Jesse look at the landscape in that 15-20 feet and what they might be able to negotiate with their neighbors so that they can mitigate that.
I would think that that's fair.
I mean, the addition itself is not bad, and and it's a fair addition. It's just, yes, it's going to impact the neighbor, and so they need to figure out a way to mitigate that.
Yeah, I agree. Any other comments? Okay, then would someone like to make a motion? I'll make a motion. I'd make a motion to move this forward onto the action calendar, and to include in the next submission a landscape plan, specifically between the neighbor to the left, I believe it is.
I second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Chair Gall and a second by Vice Chair Pfaff. Any discussion on the motion? Nope. And can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Camerado.
Aye.
Commissioner Haran,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Vice Chair Pfaff,
Aye.
and Chair Gall.
Aye. The motion passes 6-0-1, and this is not appealable. All right, that concludes our design review study items. So we'll move on to commissioners' reports. We got 8 minutes, Ruben, till 11.
All right. Let's see. Under director reports, we have no FYIs tonight. Just to summarize the December 19th City Council meeting, they honored City Arborist and Park Superintendent Bob Disco, who retired at the end of December after many years of service with the city. Jen, I think you were there. Do you remember? Do you recall how many years he's been with the city?
Oh my gosh. I think it was it possibly 30 years? I mean, it was something not in that position, but he's been here a long time and he's from here. So, he and his mother was a beautification commissioner.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway,
long time.
Yeah, long time.
And to fill Bob's shoes, they selected Richard Holtz, who was also the park supervisor at the time. So he is now the new city arborist / park superintendent. They did the ceremonial rotation of officers. So we have a new Mayor Michael Brownrigg, and the vice mayor is Donna Colson. They also introduced or swore in the new council member, Peter Stevenson, who and Ann Keegren was also recognized for her service with the city. I believe it's almost 17 years as a council member, and then I believe it was 7 or so years as planning commissioner. So long time and a lot of dedicated years of service to the city. So very eventful evening, which was in person for that. And we will let you know if we are returning to in person for the February meetings. We at this point don't know quite yet, but we do have to definitely be in person in March. But we'll let you know about the 2 meetings in February.
We still got one in January too, right?
Yes, you are right. I was getting ahead of myself already. So yeah, that's all we had from staff.
So is January going to be Zoom or in person?
That we don't
Don't know
know.
yet.
Yeah. We will know soon because we have to send out public hearing notices for that meeting on Friday. So we will know soon.
All right. Well, thank you very much for everybody sticking around. Seems like we were able to get wordy because we've been off for so long. So at 10:55, I'm going to adjourn this meeting and thank you all for being here, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Happy
Great.
New Year.
Thanks, everyone. Happy
Thank
New
you.
Year.